That would be hilarious, though. Like, what if this podcast just goes viral in Russia? Make all the tags and like keywords for the Google, like Putin,
Dude,
Russia.
I highly doubt they have access to the internet to the point where they could find this podcast. Actually,
You
I don't
think
know.
they have the internet in Russia?
Well, they do, but I mean, it's got to be heavily censored, right?
I don't know.
Like,
That's a good question.
I would assume so, because like, how could you live in an authoritarian state with access to the internet and not be like, seems a little weird living here. Like, things kind of suck here. I don't know. Like, I'm watching people in America and the UK, and it seems pretty cool.
Let's find out. Do Russians have free internet?
Yeah, like just unshackled internet, like uncensored. Because I know China is heavily censored as far as like what they can get in and out.
Russia's system of operational investigatory measures requires telecommunications operators to install hardware provided by the Federal Security Service. It allows the government to unilaterally monitor users' communications, data, and content, including phone calls, email traffic, and web browsing activity.
Nice. Sounds about right. See, the problem with that, though, is you have a guy like, T Carp comes around and he's like, dude, all I got to do is just install a little VPN, a little IP scrambler. Next thing you know, you're on the dark web. Like, I'm sure, like, you can't keep the cat in the bag. Like, yeah, for the majority of citizens, you can probably censor them on the internet. But, like, if you have internet access, there's enough you can do to get around that, I would assume.
And it sounds crazy. We're like, oh, the Russian government, they're spying on their shit. Meanwhile, come to America and the exact same thing is happening. It's just not as right in your face.
Yeah, well, we just don't talk about it. I mean, the Patriot Act, it's right there for all of us to see. Like, you can read the bill and understand that you can basically survey any American without a warrant for any reason. If you just decide, they're doing something weird, you can be surveyed against. So, it's definitely prevalent here as well. So to sit there and point the finger at them, theirs is obviously more egregious, but yeah, we still deal with that here.
I've always wondered to what extent they actually monitor someone like you and me. Like, if we were to say that we're going to kill the president, like, is that an automatic, like, somebody's looking at us right now?
Yeah, I've wondered that too, because like, right now during this conversation, we could say anything, right? And so the question is does that raise a flag? Like, hey, let's say you have like an ID on you, like maybe your social security, like it's tied to your web account. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the account. Like, that's how it actually is. So if you said something that they didn't like, would you be flagged? Then all of a sudden, they're going to be paying attention to your previous internet search history. Because I guess, where does the rabbit hole go down? Like, does your ISP provider, your internet service provider, do they keep a log of your search, and do they turn that over to the government, or is it they just have back channels to your search history? So all that's very beyond me, but at the very least, we know for a fact they're paying attention to what we're saying at all times, or they can be if they want to.
Yeah, have you heard of coolrealms.com, where you can download these different? Anyways, I downloaded a PS2 file.
Oh, emulators.
To my laptop, and it said download NordVPN before you do this, so your ISP doesn't flag you or some shit like that.
Yeah, that emulators. Yeah, and it's probably a good idea. Haley actually has a VPN, and she uses it only to change her address to the UK so that she can watch British television, because she's obsessed with some show called Love Island. It's a British show. She's actually watching it right now in our bedroom. And
I've heard of that show.
Yeah, it's very disgusting. But yeah, it's probably not a bad idea to have a VPN. Just give you like a little level of security. But at the same time, it's like, we're not doing anything that they're going to be paying attention to as of right now. Like, I don't know. My online presence is fairly insignificant. Like, you might catch the occasional Pornhub visit, and beyond that, it's like, just random YouTube videos about like ancient Egypt or, history or, yeah, I don't know, like how to fix a car. Like, I don't think we're a domestic threat or would be categorized as that. But at the same time, it's creepy knowing that the NSA has the ability to just like pop in at any moment and be like, oh, what's this guy like looking up? We saw he sent a Snapchat. Is that a sarcastic joke about saying he was going to kill the president, that he hates Joe Biden? Or, does this person really hate Donald Trump? Are they going to plan an assassination attempt? Oh, dude. Um, you followed remember that story like a couple years back about Governor Whitmore, I believe, Michigan governor or something like that. There
Yeah.
was a planned assassination attempt. And I come to find out, like half the people involved with the like attempt were literally FBI agents. So it's like some guy probably said something online like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill the freaking governor," and then all of a sudden you had FBI agents like going in on this, and like next thing you know, they were probably leading them towards doing something, and then they arrest them. Like, we caught a terrorist. Like, good job, America. They were gonna kidnap a governor and kill her. But like, they very well could have led them to that decision.
How much of that is the case with January 6th, too, is a big question that I have in my mind. Like, how much of it was provoked?
I don't know. I don't see that's getting down in the rabbit hole. And I trust me, I enjoy my time in the rabbit hole. It's fun to go down into the dark conspiracy theories and all of that stuff. But I also think that the more you look, the more you find to an extent. And I don't know. I mean, you would assume that they had sleeper cells and all those QAnon people, and they knew something was happening. And also, the way Trump was speaking about the election was the first time we had a sitting president pretty much not accepting the results of an election. So I would assume the intelligence agencies were on high alert. So they probably were there. I mean, just because they're there doesn't mean it's proving that they were invoking or provoking a riot. It is weird though how they got in so easily. Like, this is the United States Congress, like it's the Senate chambers, and like, like how did they get in so easily? And also, why weren't they putting up a fight? And there's a lot to be discussed about that. And also, I think that when you see the people and you're like, oh my God, there's a throng of people coming in, they're probably armed because they're Republicans, So it's probably best to just let them in. Because, at the end of the day, it's like, how much are those guys getting paid who are guarding the Capitol? Like, all of that comes to mind, right? Like, how much am I getting paid to guard the people that are making laws? Is it worth my life to die for, I don't know, $30 an hour? Maybe $40 an hour? I don't know how much they're getting paid. It's an interesting question. So at the end of the day, they're making a risk assumption. Because it's not like it was like the National Guard was there.
Yeah.
There weren't actual, like, the military wasn't there. And like, that's their job. Like, that they signed up for it. That's what they do, is they get told to go do something and they do it. But this is just like, I don't know, Capitol Hill police. So what are they getting paid? And is it worth dying over possibly if they started just shooting at people when they entered? So all of that comes into play. I don't really, as a general theory, like, I don't know, this is how I think about stuff. I don't really buy conspiracy theories to an extent. If it involves more than 10 people, I think that you lose the ability to have a conspiracy, just because. And I mean, think about your friends. You tell them something, and then how long does it take for that to circle around to other ears? Like, how well do people keep a secret, especially a secret as serious as something like, oh, we maybe encouraged a riot for January 6th to get Donald Trump impeached and never to be president again, and then get him tried and arrested. Like, that's a massive thing. That's not just something little. Like, oh, dude, did you hear? Like, I don't know, you just whatever scuttlebutt's going around that gets passed around really easily. This is something that impacts everyone's life, and like, especially the alien stuff. If it involves more than 20 people, it's just really hard for me to buy that there's a government agency keeping their mouth shut about that. Like, how many whistleblowers have come forward? And there have been some recently that come forward, but like this Hunter Biden thing, like he just took a plea deal or whatever, and there's whistleblowers in the IRS immediately came forward and like, yeah, we wanted to charge him with more, but we kind of had our hands tied. So like, we immediately got the information we needed, and now it's out there. And now people have to decide whether they have to go through all that and decide whether or not that's true or false. So I just don't buy the whole like a big one's like the moon landing conspiracy. Like, you know, how many people like indirectly worked on the moon landing? I believe it's over 100,000 people who worked on the moon landings.
Dang,
Like
really?
just between like, yeah, different agencies and different, you know, independent contractors who worked on the moon landings. It's like, so for you to independently say like, oh yeah, we didn't make it to the moon. It's like, I don't mean, there's an argument to be made there, but then you're asking, you know, the people that were involved in that operation, it's like how many people would have to have direct knowledge of the fact that we didn't actually go to the moon. So that's what like that to me is what makes a conspiracy. So for something as big as, you know, January 6th or the moon landing, it's like how many people to have direct knowledge of the fact that that's actually not true. So you could probably say that most people working on the moon landings were just doing the theoretical mathematics and like doing all the calculations, making the rockets and the boosters. So they wouldn't really know if they made it or not, you would assume. But then there's people in the headquarters who are on, you know, command control, people that actually went. So I mean, that's Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and then we went back more than just that. I think. Do you know how many moon landings we had? It was like 3 or 4 or something like that after the first moon landing.
0 in my mind, brother.
Well,
No, I'm kidding. I have no idea.
so then you start taking that ball and moving it downhill, and you realize that there has to be at least 1,000 people that would have to have been involved in something that big. And so you're asking 1,000 people to shut their mouth about something so massive that would, I mean, if our government was lying to us about a moon landing, you know, that seems insignificant, but you know, at the time it was a space race, it was the communists, it was Russia versus America, like was who's going to make it there first. So it's a pretty big deal. And then, you know, so if that's true, they're lying to us about that, then it's almost like, you know, we overthrow the government. There's a lot of things at stake there. So I just don't buy that. I don't buy that a lot of people can keep their mouths closed. The only conspiracies I can buy are something where it doesn't touch a lot of people. So for example, maybe like how we got into the Middle East after 9/11. You know, when they said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and then they get there and like, oh yeah, we didn't find anything. It's like that all that takes is a couple people on surveillance to be like, yeah, they might have weapons of mass destruction. It's like 3 people monitoring whatever like feeds or you know, listen, keeping their ears to the ground, and that gets passed up the chain of command. The president hears that, and then it's after we get attacked for the first time on our soil since Pearl Harbor, which that really actually wasn't domestic, you know, in the continental United States. That was in Hawaii. So, you know, people are itching for a conflict, and then, you know, they just take that as gospel, and the next thing you know, they go to war. But, you know, that's something where it's like, that makes sense. You know, it didn't take a lot of people to get that information awry to get to a perspective where we launch a war on Iraq. And then everything after that, I think, you know, the conspiracy theories are, oh, they wanted to go there to control the poppy fields to, you know, produce heroin because most of the heroin apparently comes out of that area. Or maybe it's oil related or something. Like everything that happens afterwards is just a cause of going to war. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in a bookstore yesterday, and of course, the first one that caught my eye is 60 documents that the US government doesn't want you to see. And it's just a little bound collection of all these documents that have been released. And one of them was a whole study of the poppy heroin economy in the Middle East. They're going in like full detail about how it's benefiting the economy, the pros and cons. It was super weird. Like they've looked into it that much.
Yeah, well, not to mention, I mean, there are like I've seen articles, and this is me kind of talking out there. I don't have the stats right here to back it up, but I know that the poppy production after we invaded like quadrupled at least in those areas. So it's like, okay, there's a small conspiracy maybe of people who wanted to go to war. That's like what I can buy. And then it gets up to the chain of command after you know, a national tragedy. People are itching to go to war because we were attacked. We want to attack someone back. It's America, we're the most powerful military in the world. So we go into war, and then whatever happens afterwards is kind of just the tumultuous effects of war. And you're there, and then people realize, you know, independent contractors, maybe like defense contractors, realize they can make money, if they guard these poppy fields. I mean, there are stories of people like there were military troops guarding poppy fields in Iraq and I think Afghanistan. So like they're guarding heroin production fields, like where they actually grow the plant that's in that makes heroin. So I mean, that's weird, right? That's clearly odd. But you have to go back to the source of all of this. Like, so that's just why I'm not a big conspiracy guy. I just think that people use information and bend it to their will.
Mm.
And it kind of like it has to be based around sort of a fact, which makes the whole COVID thing interesting, and just like I don't buy that was put out for a specific reason. It was definitely leaked from a lab. I think that the evidence is showing that now. And then you could say, well, from then on, politicians can use that to their will if they wanted to. But it was affecting the whole world. It wasn't just us. So you go into that and it's like to manufacture a crisis and involve a lot of people in it. I don't buy that nobody says anything. Because we're not Russia, we're not a communist country. We don't just like fucking murder people who like speak out against the government. Like in fact, in America, it almost seems like there's an incentive to speak out against the government. Like everybody hates the government. It's quite interesting. Like a really interesting thing that I think kind of sums up Congress in whole. If you poll individual Americans about their congressmen, the people that they voted in, like the district that you live in that has a U.S. House of Representative or whatever, if you ask them, how is your congressman doing? How would you approve their rating? Because you voted for them, like their majority rating is over 50%. So people are like happy with their congressman. But then when you look at like the approval for Congress, it's like 20%. So there's a disconnect somewhere involved with that. Like everyone's happy with their guy, but when everyone gets to there, everyone's pissed at Congress. So it's like, I don't know. It goes back into like tribalism and, I'm going to support my person because I voted for him. And, I listened to a few of his speeches. He sounds like a good guy. And everyone there is like made speeches and sounds like a good guy. But when they get there and lobbyists start, doing what they do. And next thing you know, everyone hates Congress because they can't do anything.
I think you could explain that though, is maybe your Missouri representative somewhat represents you. They're from the town down the street or whatever. But the further up and up you get, the less representative it is of who you actually are, your values.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. There's definitely like I don't know, it's just like the more you go up the chain and you get away from where your vote actually matters, and then you have this massive federal government that crams things down on you. And that really comes from executive agencies, and it's not like when there's a new president every 4 years or 8 years if it's a 2-term president. It's not like everyone in those executive agencies leaves. Like they're there for life and it's appointed by the president and they just kind of sit in that position. So it's like, you let's say like you won the presidency, you would immediately take over the executive branch, which is bloated so out of control now compared to what the founders probably wanted it to be. You have the EPA, you have the FBI, you have the NSA, you have the CIA, like you have so many things, the IRS, like you have things that you're technically in charge of, right? But you didn't appoint any of those people to their positions, so it's not your people. So you're kind of like, and Trump's presidency proved it particularly. Like he was always fighting amongst his agencies. Like the FBI was running investigations against him while he was in office. So you have like, and some people say deep state, like there kind of is to an extent like a deep state of people that were appointed by previous presidents who've just kind of climbed up the ladder. Here are bureaucrats who aren't answerable to me or you. Like, yeah, technically like the House has oversight, like there are oversight committees within Congress that can, um, call hearings and make them testify in front of Congress. They can strip their funding away, but it's gotten to the point where it's so complicated to do that, and it's not bipartisan, so it's never going to happen. So these people just sit in their positions and do that, and it's very interesting how the situation just gets out of hand so fast, and like all of a sudden, like let's say you're like I was saying, like you're president, like you're put in, and you're meeting with like the EPA, like the head of the EPA. I don't know, maybe you would make the head of the EPA, or you would keep the guy on, and you're talking to him, and he's like, "Here's what I think," we've noticed this, and you're like, oh yeah, man, that sounds good. And then all of a sudden, the FBI head of the FBI walks in, and you're like, here's what I think we should do. And you're like, oh my god. And then you roll down that list, and you're also in charge of the military. I didn't even mention that. So you're trying to juggle like so many things that you just like. You have people that are just like, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, sounds good. So there's no real direct oversight of what they're doing. It just runs rampant.
And at this point, I don't think there's any scaling it down. Like,
No.
unless there's some incredible act of violence, the people who are in power are not going to be like, yeah, you know what, the federal government, we probably have overstepped our boundaries a little bit too far. We're just going to scale it back 15%. That's not happening ever.
No, never. Absolutely not. I mean, like, when's the last time that a federal agency like actually got like cut, or like a tax provision, or like a social, not a social security, just like I'm forgetting the word. I don't know, just like things that we say we're going to pay, like benefits to people. You know, when's the last time that ever got scaled down? It's never happened. Like the government continues to grow every single year. Like we spend more money than we did the year before. That's been true since like 1980. There's never been an actual cut to government spending. For all the conservatives, like the ultra right, like not I'm saying like the MAGA people, but like the actual libertarians that are out there that are like believe in a small federal government, there hasn't been a situation in which they've actually cut government spending. Like it just never happened. Like these agencies continue to grow and bloat. It and so like when people are like, oh, it's like Trump, I love Trump, I'm a conservative, I believe in limited government. Like, well, he actually blew the deficit out more than Obama did, and no one talks about that, you know, because he's on your side, you just agree with him. But in reality, he governed very like liberally as far as like the budget was not balanced, even remotely close. We were blowing out the deficit. Yeah, he cut taxes, but you can't cut taxes and not cut spending and expect the deficit just sit where it's at.
I don't understand with the deficit, where does it go? Because at some point, isn't the bill going to be due? Like, does the economy just completely collapse and the entire lower and middle class just goes into starvation? I don't understand how far we can keep kicking that ball further and further down the line until eventual economic collapse.
I don't either. It's beyond me. I don't understand it. I mean, like it just seems like money is not real. Like when you think about it, like in general, like granular terms, like it just did like okay, so you're telling me the Federal Reserve during Trump's presidency, like he was putting pressure on them to lower interest rates during COVID to create a stimulus in the economy, and we saw that. I mean, we had horrible supply chain problems because everyone was getting paid to stay at home. You were basically making what you made at work to not go to work. You know, and if you had a job that you could work online, you worked online, but how much production was actually getting done? I would say production was lowered while the amount of money in the economy was still the same. People were getting paid to stay at home. And there was a part of a provision that just took like your if you were on welfare, like if you like got laid off, like it just added $650 like to your welfare. So like like you know how like the restaurant business has just been screwed. Like no one can go back to get servers and waiters and whatever. Like part of that was because they weren't making that much money, but then whenever they got unemployment benefits from the federal government during COVID, they added on $650 to every single check they received from the government. So they were literally making more money to go home and stay home. So incentivize people to stay home and not do shit. So what do you think is going to happen? They're just blowing all this money into the economy, and then people have all this money they're sitting on, so they get on Amazon and they start ordering stuff, and then supply chains start breaking down. And part of that's also because there weren't people working at the plants that we needed, but a lot of it's just demand. It was all demand, really. We just had a massive demand increase because people were at home looking around their house, like, oh man, I should replace that, or I should fix this, and next thing you know, you just get a ton of people ordering a bunch of stuff that they normally weren't ordering. So the supply chain just starts, buckling underneath the pressure of that. So I just like, and then we have inflation. But I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't like hyperinflation. It wasn't like World War II Germany or pre-World War II Germany. It wasn't like your money was useless. So you kind of look at all of it, you kind of step back away from it, and you're like, We haven't really felt the effects of it yet. Is money real? Like, does all this matter? Can we just spend out our ass and not worry about it? Like, it brings up interesting questions. Like, I am on the side of where I think that it does matter. It eventually will come back to us. We'll have to pay the interest rates on all of it. But it is weird how we haven't really felt the effects of it. Do you know what I
We're
mean? Like, it's
so
just weird.
we're so in debt to China. The only alternative that I see is like, okay, we continue to be extremely in debt to China as their superpower grows, or they just say we're going to invade your country and nuke you unless we somehow get this money back. But
Well,
I don't know.
so
I don't understand it well enough.
that's actually the majority of American debt is owned by American citizens. So that's a good thing. I think it's something close to 80% of American debt is owned by American citizens. It's when you buy a bond, it's like you buy a bond, you're basically taking a loan from the federal government, you know, or they're taking a loan from you. You give them money and they're gonna give you it back at an interest rate. So most of our debt is owned by us. Like that's a good thing about it. China is the number one country. China, as far as a country goes, owns the majority of our debt of countries, but it's a small proportion of our debt. Most of our debt's owned by Americans. And that's why, like when SVP and all those banks collapsed or started collapsing is because the safest bet in world history as far as economics has always been since like the 1800s or maybe later than that, in recent modern times has been to buy American debt. If you buy American debt, it's the safest investment in the history of the world, bar none. You will get your money. You've always gotten your money. We've never defaulted in our debt. It's always happened. We pay people on time. Now, the problem is when you buy an American bond at 2% yield and inflation hits 7%, like those banks that collapse, it's like, well, all of a sudden, if they're buying American debt, they're buying bonds to kind of back up their banking system and inflation hits at 7%. Well, now they're in the negative. Now they have a problem. This is me like at a third grade level of understanding about the situation because the issue is just so complicated. It's hard to even comprehend. But basically, they were at a problem because they had bought American debt because it's the safest investment of all time. But inflation hit, and it hit more than what they were getting on interest on their bonds. So that's how they kind of collapsed because people started hearing rumors of them not being liquid enough to pay people back. If people wouldn't have withdrawn their money, they probably would have made it through this inflationary cycle and been fine. But you know how that goes. Somebody hears something from somebody about, yeah, we're in a really bad position. And then someone's like, fuck, I'm taking my money out. And then all of a sudden you have all these people taking millions of dollars out of the bank. And they don't have like a bank, like when you give your money to a bank, they don't have it sitting in a vault. They lend it on interest and try to make money on your money. It's a weird situation and it's very complicated. But essentially that's kind of what drove those banks to collapse. So if you have hyperinflation in this country, which we haven't, thankfully, we would be in a horrible spot. It would make what we've gone through look like nothing. I mean, it would be a complete collapse of not just our economy, but the world economy, because everything's tied to the dollar.
How long do you think that's going to last, though? Like, I wonder as the economy continues to become more and more global, is it a wise investment or can you even invest in Russian currency, Chinese currency? Like, how long is the dollar going to remain the dominant economic trading post
I don't
for
know.
the
I
globe?
mean, there's been rumors and people talking about, I don't know if it's just, people trying to get people to be scared, but, I think some of, what country was it? Oh man, it's one of the Middle Eastern countries that has like most of the oil like exports in the world. Um, Saudi Arabia, they were like meeting with India, China, and Russia to possibly change because like what we have right now is called it's like the petrodollar, like the world currency when it comes to oil is always flown through the dollar. And they met together to see if maybe they could change that to something else. I don't know the exact details on that. So if that were to happen, because the Biden administration has put some pressure on Saudi Arabia, and you can argue whether it was good or not, but they talked about changing that petrodollar to being something else. So if that were to happen, then the dollar would probably crash because we're backed by the dollar's not just backed by the United States government and our military, which is the best in the world. It's backed by being how oil's traded. Like most of the world's oil goes through dollars. So if that were to change, and there's been talks about it recently, because we manipulate our market so much with the Federal Reserve, and this is so beyond me. Like this is like a second grade level of understanding, but it's so complicated. You know, the Federal Reserve is a chair of people that decide interest rates, and it's not like lawmakers who decide that. It's not the president. Like he has the ability to appoint those people, but Trump was putting pressure on them to keep interest rates low, and now they've jacked interest rates up to cool off inflation because they want to cool the market down. So all this is just so over me, and I have, like I said, just a very basic understanding of it. But if that were to change, then you would see a lot of things change within our country because we benefit off that. You know, we patrol the world's oceans. Like the Navy is pretty much like you're not just making a bet with the United States economy. When you trade with us, you're making a bet on our military. Like you know that we'll patrol your seas. We'll make sure that like Yemen doesn't invade Iran. Like we're like I don't know, that's a bad example, but you know how that goes. Like Japan is rest assured knowing that like we're gonna protect them if God forbid China invades or Russia does something. Like we will protect you. Like so they're all benefiting on the idea that like we're patrolling the world's oceans, like making sure trade can go through countries that are hostile with other countries. Like I don't know, all that has like a part to play in the scales. You know, if we're doing world trade, someone has to be there to like, you know, make sure that there aren't pirates grabbing shit. Which I mean, we deal with that, but there's not a rogue nation out there being like imperialistic, like you know, World War II Japan that just started taking over countries. Like we put an end to that. Like that doesn't happen really. It's pretty stable for the most part, so people can rest assured knowing they can trade on the open market because we're patrolling the seas. I mean, we have bases all over the world. It's not just here. Like our military is in almost every allied country that we can have. There's a base almost everywhere in the world that's just patrolling the area, kind of just flopping our dicks out like, hey, look at it. It's pretty big. Do you want to suck it? Probably not. It's not going to feel good for you if you take it up the ass.
How
So
long?
that's kind of just,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's kind of just kept people at bay for a while. Because if you want to play ball in the world economy, you kind of have to go through the United States. And it's backed by our military. It's backed by the strength of our economy. It's also backed by the petrodollar. But if that were to change, if things start happening, then all of a sudden you really have a crisis on your hands. And there's been murmurings about that, but I don't know enough about it to really go beyond that.
So I read the other day that the government doesn't collect $70 billion or something like that in taxes every year. Just people not paying it or not paying it on time, whatever it might be. How long until, well, if you look back in history, currency has changed over time endlessly, like beads, gold coins, whatever it might be. Currency is always changing. So with that giant deficit that the government doesn't collect, do you think it's possible that the government mandated cryptocurrency will come along at some point where every time you use your card or whatever it is, they can track your spending or your income and just take it right from that?
Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, an income tax was I mean that was fought like 3 times in the Supreme Court. It was literally made unconstitutional, I believe, twice by the Supreme Court until finally it passed through because they had enough liberal judges on the court that said we know we need an income tax. So eventually, you know, you get the meter to move enough, and you get American people, you get a spin doctor out there to spin a story about why we would maybe need this and why it's beneficial. And next thing you know, yeah, we're in that position. The thing about our government that makes it so unique is that any change in our government it's like turning a massive ship around. I mean, it is hard to change directions with it. Like it is truly difficult. Like the founders, for all their faults, you know, all the racism and you know, like we had slaves and dealing with all that crap. And you know, the only people who could vote in the originality of America were white landowning males. The only people who could vote in actually it was 1787, I believe, was when the Constitution was ratified. Maybe I might have that wrong. But from that point forward until like 1865, the only people who could vote were white landowning males. So you had to own land, you had to be white, and then you could vote. So like then 1865 Civil War happens. Emancipation Proclamation. People are freed. Black people are freed from slavery. We have immigration because we have this massive country with few people, so we need a lot of people out there building railroads. Like Transcontinental Railroad was built by basically by Chinese people, and so we just have a ton of immigration. We have people flooding into our country because we need their labor. And then when was women's suffrage? Do you know? I think it was like early 1920s or something like that.
Not that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago. So like the idea of America being like this, like, liberty holding the freedom bell up. It's like, well, if you're a white landowning male, then yeah, you had a lot of freedom. More freedom than you had now, because you could own slaves. And you can't do that now. So yeah, it's a kind of a weird America's in a weird thing. But it takes forever, to change that shit. So to bring it back to what you were saying about like the deficit and currencies, like I don't know. I mean, it could happen. It very well could. But I think there's enough people out there that would lose their shit if they didn't have American. Like you don't have cash. Like, cash is king. Everyone always says that, and there's a truth to that because you can do a side job for somebody and be like, hey man, I'll cut you a 25% discount if you pay me in cash. And they're like, yeah, that's sweet. I save money. You save money because instead of paying 33% of your income to the federal government, you just don't claim that income and you just get cash and you don't go be a dumbass like a drug dealer and buy a brand new Cadillac because they can track those receipts. You just keep that in a safe. Anytime, let's say you go on a vacation, instead of spending it with your debit card, you spend it with cash. And like there's a lot of ways people hide income beyond just that. But I mean, cash is a good way of hiding income because you can't track that. And that's something that could possibly happen if America slips more into an authoritarian regime. But I mean, as of right now, the Supreme Court is stacked conservative. So, and not just conservative in the idea of like republicanism, more conservative in the idea of like fundamentalism. So they're more on like the side of like states' rights, limited government. So I don't see that changing for 20 years if they all stay in where they're at right now. Because I mean, Biden hasn't appointed any Supreme Court nominee because they have him dead. It's a lifetime sentence. So I mean, that's what makes America so unique is because Biden could go out tomorrow and through executive order just say, yeah, there's no more cash in America. Like it's all like what you were saying. It's all like it's all online. So we have a cryptocurrency now. Well, then the Supreme Court would probably be like, you can't fucking do that. You don't have the ability to do that. It's not enumerated to you in the Constitution. So that's how that gets stopped here. Like other countries that don't have that, like they're more like they can like shift so radically. Like Biden's been president for what, 3 years now? 2.5 years, 3 years. And how much has your life actually changed? I mean, you got to ask that question. I think people get lost in the mix of like, oh, dude, I fucking hate Biden. Trump's the worst. But like, how much did your life change during his administration? Like, not a whole lot. I mean, yeah, grocery bills got a little higher, but is that his fault or is that the culmination of stimulus and Trump's, giving people checks and then him and Biden also doing stimulus, like, and people staying at home because of COVID. So like, there's a lot to think about as far as that goes. Like, yeah, the president has a lot of power, but does he have the power to change our day to day? I don't think so that much.
I don't think so either. And yeah, people get caught up in that a lot, but like at the end of the day, you're going to be an American. If anything does change, like you said, it's going to be super slow over time, unless something crazy like 9/11 happens.
Yeah.
World War III happens. And then it's like, okay, everything just shifted overnight. But
yeah, I mean,
that doesn't happen. Yeah, you're pretty much in the same boat. Just the politics is going to flip this way and this way every 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, we went through, I think, arguably the biggest change in American history, besides like the freeing of slaves and women's right to vote. Like all the monumental landmarks that we've made, like, also like the civil rights movement. But like recently, this COVID thing, like proved that the federal government has the ability to tell you that you can't go to work. And that was never argued in a court. That was never argued in the Supreme Court. That stuff never really came into play besides on the local level. They kind of left it up to localities. Like, yeah, Trump ordered like a 2 weeks to stop the spread, and that was a federal mandate. But like, we're all so scared. And we forget because now that COVID's over, Everyone's like, "Oh, fuck COVID is stupid. I shouldn't have got vaccinated. I shouldn't have wore a mask." Like now the data's out. Like yeah, like the vaccines didn't really work unless you had a really high comorbidity levels. And if you were obese, you probably should have got vaccinated. But if you're a young, healthy adult, there really wasn't a need to get vaccinated. Like I think a lot of reason that we got vaccinated is because they said it would stop the spread. It didn't stop the spread. Like it's all proven now. Mask didn't stop the spread. It's all proven now. Like you can't argue against that. Like that's all fact. So like we went through a time period where basically your local government, not necessarily your local government, but like your state government had the decision. So you look at California, like it was law lockdown, complete lockdown. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't go anywhere. You were lucky if you went out to get a meal outside. So you have that dealing against Florida that was wide open, Missouri wide open. So like that was a federalism. It was a beautiful example of federalism, but it was also like an eye-opening situation for a lot of people, I think, and for me included, where I looked at like, yeah, conservative governance, like Republican governance, has its issues. Like I don't enjoy their like social stuff. Like I don't care about their anti-gay stuff. I just leave that out. I don't care. But the ability of like living in Missouri, like to go to Lake of the Ozarks and just go do whatever the fuck you wanted, was like they didn't they didn't stampede on our freedoms here. And to me, that was why I decided, okay, that's why I'll live in Missouri for the rest of my life, probably, is because like we had a national crisis, a worldwide crisis, and our response was more of like, do your due diligence. Like, if you want to wear a mask, wear it. You're not being forced to wear one. While in other states, it's like you couldn't go outside, you couldn't do stuff you wanted to do, and not just in America. I mean, China. Have you seen you see all the videos of people fishing on drones or lowering their dog on a winch to go piss because they couldn't go outside? Like that's the reality of people that lived in China, like living in a communist dictatorship where they said you can't go outside. Like the government, imagine, like we went through that. The government told us you can't go outside, you can't go meet with people, you can't live your day-to-day life because of a disease. Like, that's insane. Like it's going to be written about in textbooks as being one of the biggest authoritarian grabs worldwide. It wasn't just the United States, it was China, it was Canada. I mean, Canada's gone absolutely off the rails with how they dealt with it. And it's countries that we would think of as like Western freedom oriented countries. Like the UK didn't handle it well either. Like there's a nature in us to go authoritarian in times of crisis, and that's scary to me. So when I saw that, and look, we were all spared by the fact that COVID wasn't that bad. It could have been a lot worse. If it was a lot worse, then I think we would have a different dialogue right now. But the ability for our government in Missouri to say, do what you want. You are your own person. Go out there and live your life. That to me, like that's like, okay, like you earn my trust. I'll live here for a while. But at the same token, it's like anti-abortion laws. They're cramming down on people, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't agree with abortion, but I'm like, you're your own person. Decide what you want to decide. Like what happened to personal freedom in this country and liberty? Like, I feel like that, like it goes both ways. Like, cause you have the left that's more personal choice on like specific things about your lifestyle. The right's more like freedom about like your land, if you own land, like you can do what you want here. And like, so I don't know, why can't we meld those two and have a more moderate party?
It was so crazy looking back on those 2 years. It felt like a dream. Like, is this really happening right now? Is America really doing this? Like, if you were to come up with a new business plan, be like, yeah, here's how it's going to happen. First of all, based on fear, like the ultimate driver of human behavior. If people are
Yeah.
terrified, you can get them to do anything. But then, two, if you want to participate in society, you have to use our product.
Yeah.
Boom, billions of dollars in your pocket. It's fucking insane. And what is stopping them from doing that again? I say them, but like now that we've seen kind of the experiment happen once, what is going to stop it from happening again is my biggest concern.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. It's definitely scary because I mean, I was a good boy. I was a good boy, daddy government. I went and got vaccinated like he told me. And then all this stuff comes out about it not slowing trend like the spread, not really protecting you for the most part. And in fact, I got the Moderna vaccine, which was banned in the EU for people under the age of 30. So we have the EU, which is also like the formative, like it's leading the world as far as banning chemicals that are bad for people. The FDA is a fucking joke. I mean, like glyphosate, which is Roundup weed killer. This is a total sidebar, but it's so bad for you. It's so bad for people. We spray it on all our foods. We genetically modified all of our crops so that they could withstand Roundup, so they can saturate corn, wheat, anything that you buy from the grocery store in Roundup. It'll kill all the weeds around it, but it won't kill that corn because modified. You would literally not be killed by Roundup, but everything else will die from it. It's an herbicide, and the FDA just doesn't care about that. They know the side effects to it are horrendous. They're just so captured. We have such bad agency capture in the United States because of lobbyism and money, and our sunshine laws are pathetic. Like I think it's like 4 years. Like once you're in the FDA, you have to wait 4 years before you can go join a company that's in the drug industry. So like essentially, like a lobbyist could come up to you, take you out to dinner, be like, "Hey man, so I see that you are weighing in on our drug, Ozempic. Let's say it's a new one that's out there. It's a weight loss drug that people are taking. I see you're weighing in on Ozempic. How long are you planning on staying in the FDA? Because you could make a lot more money out there if you worked for us or another company similar to us." Like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's like, well, underneath the table, it's like, we'll offer you $4 million to sit on the board of our director for Pfizer or whatever fucking company you want. If after you wait the 4 years after you're out, you can just sit on the board of directors, basically do fucking nothing. It's basically a bribe. They can bribe people, wait 4 years, pay them that money. It's all legal. I mean, if they had transcripts of this conversation, then yeah, it wouldn't be legal. But I mean, how hard is it to not record something? It's not that hard. I mean, that's just one example of the FDA and the EPA, like of toxic chemicals that are always being dumped into our water supply. Like the EU is so much more on board with like glyphosate. I don't think is legal in the EU. Like there's so many other chemicals that are banned in the EU that we just intake on a daily basis in almost every single food that we intake, and we wonder why Americans are so obese and unhealthy. Like, well, maybe that could be a reason for all of that. But yeah, I mean, I did my part. I got vaccinated, and then comes to find out the thing I got vaccinated with. If you're in the EU, it's banned under the age of 30. The benefits don't really outweigh the risks, and it's like you guys they had a moment of like clarity where they could have been honest and forthright, and they weren't. And I think that created a massive distrust in our government, which we already had a huge distrust. It's a benefit of being American. We have a massive distrust in government. So I'd like to hope that if it happens again, people will be more wary of that. But
And that's the most sovereign thing that you have is your body.
yeah,
It's just insane to be like some people lost their jobs because they didn't want to do it. Some people had to do it because they wanted to keep their jobs. But that is your body, like the only one that you get.
yeah. Did you get vaccinated? I don't remember.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's probably a good call. Good call.
Who knows though? You're talking about chemicals. We have this app and it shows you how harsh something is chemically, rates it 0 to 100. So we just went through our shower, like soap, conditioner, shampoo, all of it is like it's straight up chemicals, 0 out of 100. So it made me think, what are we actually buying? Like, are we just being peddled chemicals constantly with everything that we use?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, given my lack of trust with the FDA, with all that's happened with COVID, I mean, COVID's a perfect example. I mean, the data is out there. Like, you can't deny it. For all the censorship they tried to do, which is even more terrifying, like the Twitter documents that Elon Musk released, like, yeah, it's not direct censorship because you can't censor freedom of speech in the United States. But because of all of our information is discussed online, like if you can pressure platforms into just censoring the information online, well, then you basically censored freedom of speech in this country. Because there's a crazy lunatic out in the corner yelling about chemicals. You're like, this guy's a fucking psycho. Like, why are you yelling on the curb street of a town about chemicals? Post it on Facebook, you freak. But when you can't post it on Facebook, when you can't do it on Twitter, and when you can't say it elsewhere, it's like that's where our dialogue has started, is on these websites. And whenever they were going against people talking ill against the vaccines, or people saying masks don't work, and they were literally getting removed from Twitter or Facebook about this, you know, and high profile doctors who have many patents in the medical field with vaccines and virologists talking against this. Like, that's fucking terrifying to me. That's authoritarian in its nature. I mean, that's bad. And that's what we went through. And they, like, the government has the claim to say, like, oh, we didn't do it. It wasn't us. It was them. But in reality, with the Twitter files coming out, like, they show that the government was pressuring Twitter to censor people, you know, talking against the vaccines. So it's like, it's just a weird, like, gray area where they can play the middle line, you know. It's, I don't know, it's interesting to me. Like, it's sad that you really think that little of people, they're that stupid? And most people are, I will admit. People are pretty moronic. Like, I talk to people about stuff and they have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, people just don't keep their ear on the ground. And that's fine. But at the end of the day, if you're gonna have a democratic, like, you know, you're gonna have a democracy, you have to trust that people can make decisions for themselves. They have to weed through the information for themselves. Like, to say, like, that's misinformation and dangerous, like, that is authoritarian as hell to me. Like, you should be able to have those conversations out loud wherever the hell you want to have them, regardless of whether it hurts your fucking feelings or not. Like, that's speech that should be countered with better speech. And, like, the fact that that's not something that's more prevalent in the mind of particularly the left, which is alarming to me. Because when we were kids, I feel like it was the right that was censoring stuff. Like, oh, they said fuck on TV. They were talking about, you know, and that's kind of coming back. Like, what do you think? I think the right's kind of bringing that censorship back, like banning books, like gay rights stuff. Like, they're kind of playing into the hands of the left now. They're saying, oh, the left's censoring us on Twitter, but it's like, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're all playing the same game. You just don't like their speech, so you want to censor that. So it's just, to me, it's ridiculous. Like, let people speak, let people talk, and then they can figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, misinformation is right now my least favorite word in the whole dictionary. And if I
Yeah.
see that someone was censored or that they're labeled as a misinformation spreader, now I'm more inclined to listen to them because we have the track record of, well, they said this was misinformation, they said this was misinformation. 2 years later, 3 years later, turns out that might not have been misinformation. So the question is, it's misinformation according to who? Most likely people who have a stake in that narrative not being out there.
Yeah, definitely. I just think that people, power is a slippery thing. I mean, I've never felt that. I've never felt the, like, that feeling of, like, I have power over people now. Like, I think that you can get just so lost on the rabbit hole with that. Like, for you, like, I know better. I know better for you. I'm going to tell you what to do. That's a very dangerous sentiment to have, because who are you to tell me what to do? Like, if it's coming from a family, friend, or loved one, like, that's a different place. Like, you need people to speak truth into your lives. And trust me, I've seen people down the rabbit hole to the point where I'm like, you are spouting stuff that I know is blatantly false. Like, I have a lot of very conservative friends who kind of got hooked into the QAnon shit. And I'm like sitting there like, that's kind of bringing us back into conspiracy talk. I'm like, do you realize how many people would have to be involved with the thing you're talking about? And not one of them to come forward, but with information to prove what you're saying. Like, it's irrational. Like, it's very irrational. But the answer isn't to look at those people who are lost and say, you don't have the ability to speak, because you're just giving credence to what they're saying. If you
Exactly.
silence somebody, like that whole Alex Jones thing, like, yeah, he's a fucking nut. He's entertaining as all hell. He's hilarious. But when you get him removed from all platforms, then the people that worship him like a fucking god are going to look at that and say, like, see, he's speaking the truth. They need to remove him from platforms because he's saying all the things that, you know, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. So it's like, that's the wrong way to go about it. You just need to reach out to your friends, the people that are in that loophole, and be like, try to rationalize it with them. And look, some people are rational. I mean, we have so many fucking homeless people on the streets screaming, or schizophrenic, or drug addicted, that are irrational. And that's just the reality of the world. But the hope is that you have the rational people outvoting the irrational people, and that becomes a non-problem. But the problem is when you have people in power saying, like, oh, you can't spread that. That's false information. That's misinformation. That's when you have a problem. It's not the people, because, yeah, people inherently are pretty stupid. At the end of the day, that's what democracy is built on. Like we should do a better job as a country valuing truth, valuing rationality, and people willing to speak their minds. We should value that. And in the whole like, Biden said he wasn't going to debate RFK Jr. and Trump said he wasn't going to participate in debates again. And like that's the last thing that we need as a country. Like we need to be able to debate these things out in the open and actually let people make their decisions, because that's just getting people digging their trenches and even more. And that's the last thing that we need. It's like if you can't talk, if you have an opinion and you get hurt by someone else's opinion that counteracts what you believe in, well, then you haven't truly thought out your opinion, in my opinion. Like, that's just how I feel about it. Like, there's nothing that I hold so close to me that's so a part of my being that I can't speak to you about it. Like, if you say, like, oh, I disagree with you, like, I'm like, oh, well, why? That's how I go. Like, my first, like, reaction is go, well, why do you disagree with me? What do you have to say against that? And then, then you can have some banter there and some dialogue. And if you change my mind, that's awesome. You changed my mind. And if you have better information or facts to bring to the discussion, I'm just not so tied into my ideology that it's like a part of me, like, I don't know. Our day-to-day lives aren't really meddled in this shit. Like, it doesn't really affect us that much. So it's like, yeah, here's my opinion on the government, but like, I don't know. What the fuck do I know? It's just such a complicated issue. So like I'll listen, I'll hear you out. I have no problem hearing you out. It's people that won't hear any criticism of their ideology. That's the problem.
And the crazy thing is that if you just turn this off, press start power, and do the same thing with your computer, it all goes away. It
Yeah.
really does. And life is fucking majestic, just like it was when you were 12 years old. Like you can step outside and feel the wind on your face. You can walk your dog, and things are not that bad. But it's this, I feel like, is what gets people.
100%. 100%. It's your phone. It's so how we're so inundated with technology and facts and information immediately. It's just such an immediate process. It's our brains are wired to want to take information that angers us. So when these algorithms learn how we want information, what's going to show you? It's going to show you stuff that angers you. So you're going to sit there like, fucking kids are turning trans now? Oh man. Fucking, oh no, this teacher was telling kids to be trans. Like, oh, I'm pissed. And you just like, that's the stuff that you're just getting like divulged. And then the algorithm is smart enough to know that you reacted with that. So it's going to show you more of that. So you think it's going to be some worldwide problem of kids going trans, but in reality, it's a minute population. Like it's so insignificant that we shouldn't even be discussing it almost. Like it should be basically like do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. Don't force it on my kids. Like I don't want that ideology espoused to my children. But if you want to do that, great. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. Like the reality is like you're saying, phones. Like it's just so prevalent, so in your face. But in reality, I mean, the trans issue is such a hot button topic right now. But like, I'm going to ask you this question. I don't know if this is bad or not to say. How many people have you met in your own life who are trans?
Met like, hey, I'm Ty, you are Brianna.
Yes.
Probably less than 3.
Same. I've met 2 people who identify as trans in my entire life. And the dialogue has been, hello, how are you? I'm good. Good. All right. Have a good day.
But that's representative of the population though, right? It's not
It
like
is.
50% of people. It's
Yeah. So
maybe 1, 2, 3%.
to make this such a hot button topic, when in reality, when you think about it in your day-to-day life, it is so insignificant, it's almost not even worth mentioning. Now I get it from their perspective because they're saying like, we're not getting our rights. We're not getting the things that we deserve. So for them, they want to have their voices heard. They want to, identify as a male and they want to be treated as a male. And my thing is like, okay, that's where it gets muddy. The whole thing gets muddy with that, right? So that's where it gets interesting. So we could have the dialogue as a nation, as a country, without it being like forced on our throats for something that affects or insignificant amount of the population. But what I currently believe about the whole thing is like, do what you want. And if I come up to you and talk to you as respect out of you, if you say like I'm a male or I'm a female, then okay, you are, whatever. Like I don't care. Like it's not affecting me personally. And if you ask me to like use a certain pronoun, that's fine. I'll do it out of respect for you. But also, don't make up your own fucking pronouns. Like, I'm not going to refer to you as a them or a they because that breaks the English language and that's ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry, I'll die on that hill. If that makes me a bigot, I'm a bigot. Or a Z or a Zay or whatever. But like, I don't, do you know what I'm saying? I just feel like that's so ridiculous.
I do. And if we're going to die on hills, I will even argue that it's slightly egoic. Like your ego is inflated if you want the entire world to revolve around you and your feelings and how you prefer to be addressed. Don't know if that's like a hot button thing to throw out. I understand if that's how you want to be treated, but if I was to come to you and be like, hey man, all knowledge that you have of me up until now, destroy it and burn it from your brain. And every time you speak to me from now on, you will address me as such. And if you don't, like I guess I don't know what the consequence would be, but we're not friends, or I'm gonna tweet
we're
about
not
you or
friends.
some shit.
Yeah, I have always said that too. Like that's such an egocentric, selfish way of living life that like that you're raising your hand up and screaming, accept me. Like, are you gonna accept that person? Like let's say like you're in third grade again and you're picking kids for the football, on the football field for a little pickup game. The kid that never gets left out, if he were to scream, you always leave me out, and you always leave me out, and you're gonna pick me, it's probably gonna make you not want to pick that person. To a certain extent. I'm not saying like if they feel like vitriol or attack from people, like it's not okay. You shouldn't hate somebody for no reason. Like they haven't affected your life, you shouldn't hate them. Like it's not the right answer. But like you said, like what kind of ego do you have where everyone around you has to bend to your will? Like you're not that important. Sorry to break it to you. There's billions of us on this planet. And the reality is that outside of your direct family and the people that know you, within 150 years, no one will even know you existed. Like you are insignificant. You are here for maybe a purpose, maybe not. I don't know what to tell you as far as that goes. I don't have definitive proof either way, but you have one life. So if you're constantly worried about how people accept you or what your thoughts are, man, that's going to drive you to insanity. Like if you're so like, just like throw the trans thing away, like about your life. If you're so worried about other people and whether or not they accept you or whether or not that's going to drive you to the point of being unhappy. Like you have to be happy with yourself and you have to be happy with who you are before you can just scream at other people. Like that's not going to get you accepted. Like that's just not the right way to go about it. And I do feel like it's slightly being like jammed down our throats. Like we're like, this is the new thing. Like, this is the new battleground. Like they continuously have to push forward with something. Like this is where you have to accept it. And I think that most people, when it comes to gay rights, like I don't know, when I was a kid, when we were kids, like that was like a big no. You don't. Gays were bad. They're going to hell. And then you educate yourself. You kind of leave your conservative Midwestern upbringing, and you're like, that's so fucked up. They love dudes. Why do I care? You know, if that's what makes them happy, go for it. Like, that's really messed up. The fact that that was illegal for a while, like that's me. It's like, and also like the people are like, they're choosing that lifestyle. It's like, why would you choose a lifestyle that's hard that doesn't even make sense? And I also buy that with the trans thing when people are like, they're just getting forced into it. I don't believe that. I think it's a genuine epidemic of people that actually identify with the other like gender. Like they truly believe that. Why would you do that to yourself? It doesn't make sense to live a horrendously hard lifestyle. Like they clearly are dealing with that. Like I don't think that's a manufactured thing. Like they're maybe there are some people who maybe pushed into it because they want the attention. Some narcissists out there that want to be, in the headlines, but I don't think that people do that. People choose the path of least resistance for the most part. So it's clearly a problem. Not a problem in the sense of like it's something that they deal with. It's something they chose. And that sucks. I can't imagine that. That'd be brutal. You feel like you're in the wrong body. But it just the fact and way in which it's pushed on people. And like you were saying, like how egocentric you are to think that everything revolves around you, that we all need to bow down to what you decide and what you do. We can just live in a general space of of thy neighbor, maybe like just try to be more encouragemental and nice to people.
I feel like
You
that's
don't have to
gonna be harder
agree.
to do though. like we have so much technology, we have so many ways to connect with people. And maybe this is just me in my own personal life, but it's almost becoming more and more isolating, this technology that we have. We're spending more
Yeah,
time in front of screens. We're spending less time, like the family units are getting further and further apart.
yeah.
It's very strange. And
And it's
is that
also
happening
just,
on purpose? Like if you are going to subscribe to this idea that AI is the next evolution of humans, it's like, is this happening as part of the plan for us to get that way?
well, it just does it, I don't know. So like this is a wild out there thought, but I've always thought like if humans make it beyond Earth, if we truly become like a type 3 civilization that leaves Earth and goes out into the stars, like we have to be unified under one banner. Like, there can't just be like, oh, this United States leaving. And it's not just the United States, it's United States Republican Conservative Baptists, because Baptists don't like Catholics and Catholics don't like Baptists. Only Baptists are on this freaking spaceship. And if you're not a Baptist, you're not a part of this. Like, no,
Yeah.
that would obviously not work. You're not going to get all of humanity's resources under one banner to lead that. So if you're going to actually evolve the species beyond that, we have to be united under one, almost like a hive mind. But like what you were saying, I think the internet has almost driven people into more of their own corners. Like I don't remember hearing all this stuff when I was a kid, and it was out there. It's not like it didn't exist. Like transgender people have existed since the beginning of time. Like there are examples of Roman history of people talking about being transgender. Like yeah, it wasn't nearly the amount now, but like it's a thing that's in homosexuality that's been a thing forever. That the humans have existed. That's been a thing. So like to act like that, you know what I'm saying? Like we would have to unify. We'd all have to become sort of a hive mind civilization to get all of our resources pulled together to jump off ship, unless maybe the elites only leave and leave us just in squalor, and the Earth gets hit by an asteroid, and that's just you have a new society that's out on Mars, and then they become intergalactic or something. But like it's almost like you almost have to be a communist country if you really like subscribe to the ideology of like the planet is failing, like global warming is killing us all. Like the only way that we can move forward is if we almost become sort of like a share our resources, pool together, which is so anti-American. Like America is founded on the idea of like hard work equals money. So work hard, you get more money. And like, yeah, I think people are seeing that that's not really reality. Like it's reality in a sense of like, if you work your ass off, I still think the American dream's alive, but I don't know. It's about, we were born in very privileged situations. So, it's not a shocker that if we grow up and have a privileged life as well, like just kind of how it goes. But to truly step beyond that, like we almost need to unify under, like, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh
Does that
yeah.
make sense? Like a communistic kind of style where it's like we share resources, we pull together and we jump ship, we expand outward. We get beyond our tribalist nature. Like religion would almost have to die at that point,
Mhm.
because if you really read the Bible, it's like it's all about evangelism. I can't say that word. You know what I'm trying to say? Evangelical. You know what I'm saying? Like you need to spread the word, spread the good news. It's all what Christianity is, like converting people. And it's not just Christianity, it's like Islam. It's like every religion is about cramming it down on other people. It's all about like spreading their message for the world. So you have all these competing ideologies that are going to have to fight against each other. And the internet has just made it worse. And you thought it would open up dialogue, but it's closed off dialogue. It's made it because it feeds you, like I was saying about those algorithms, it feeds you stuff that you interact with. And our brain is wired to interact with stuff that makes us mad. Like, so you interact with things that you see that make you angry. So it just entrenches you. Because if you're going to see the fringe of the left, yeah, you're going to see like the BLM riots and like the psychotic shit the left does. So you're gonna go, the left sucks. I hate the left. The Democrats are ruining this country. They, whatever. And if you're a liberal, moderate liberal, and it's gonna feed you like the QAnon psycho January 6 people. You're gonna say the right sucks. They hate this country. I don't like the right. They're just digging people into our foxholes, and we're all gonna just be stuck there.
Yeah. I've had this thought that we think that we're getting more and more information with these phones, and yes, we are. But at the same time, it's just a self-reflection of us.
Yeah,
It's like
Yep.
the mirror looking back at us because it's showing us exactly the things that we want to see, the things that are us, that stimulate us and interest us. So it's like the more time that I spend on my phone, the more I'm like, I'm just going deeper and deeper into myself almost in a way and not
Yeah.
interacting with the people around me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that, so I got TikTok, which is almost a sin for me to admit, but I have it. And dude, it is so fucking addicting. Like,
Mhm.
it's not just addicting that, like, it takes like a week or two to figure out what you like, and then it will
Yeah.
start showing you that stuff. And it's not just what you like, this summer hit, and I started going on the boat more frequently, and I started, wakeboarding and wake surfing again. And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, I was interacting with more boat videos. I was
Mhm.
lingering on that page longer, so I was seeing more people wake surfing. And now when I get on there, I see people like, "Hey, this is how to land a 360 on a surfboard," and I'm like, "That's entertaining. I want to know how to do that." So it's like it's not, and it's like golf, like spring hit, and I wanted to go golfing, and I watched golf videos, and it's like, shit, I want to get better at golf. And the next thing I know, I see a video of a guy talking about this is how to fix your slice, and then you start, so you add that into that, and you realize that it's just like it's you, like you're saying, it's a
Yeah.
reflection of what you want and what you're interacting with. It's not actually broadening your horizons. It's almost just what you're interested in. It's going to show you. That's the way they're designed. I mean, you think about it. Like if you're a tech, CEO, like how do we make more money? We get more interaction on our platform. We keep people on there longer. How do we do that? We show them stuff they're interested in. And if they're interested in that, they're going to stay on it longer. If they're interested in being pissed off, which most people are, like anger is more motivating, like feeling than love in some senses. Like it's almost more enjoyable to hate somebody than to love them in a weird way, like in a weird dopaminic, like you focus on the hatred more than you do the love. Because you think about it, you take a step back, like, there's so many people that you love in this earth, like your parents, if you have a good lifestyle, your good family, your siblings, your loved ones, your wife, if you have kids, your kids. That's way more important, but it's almost easier to be like talk about people you hate. And so that's going to show you that. So that's what you're going to see all the time. It's people you hate doing stupid shit. So it's what you're going to see. So you think the world's going to shit, and it probably isn't. We should probably be more optimistic. Things are probably better than we think. If you just unplugged your phone for a while, it would be an interesting experiment. 2 weeks, no cell phone, besides text messaging and calls. You turned off your data. And the only thing you do is text and call, maybe email if you need that for work. Things to just do your basic necessities. I'm sure you would see a massive improvement in your mood because you wouldn't be inundated with all this useless information that, it seems like we just move on from one existential crisis to another. It's like, oh, it was COVID, and then it was the Ukraine war, and then now it's Russia maybe being engulfed in a civil war. That, if Putin's regime falls, what happens after that? Oh yeah, I don't know. They have nuclear weapons. What happens if the people that work at the nuclear silos don't show up to work tomorrow? Oh my God, fuck! Are we gonna, they're gonna be nuclear weapons, and they hit mercenaries that take over the Russian government. And the next thing you know, you're just down the rabbit hole, and you're just freaked out. But if you just unplug, I think you're gonna be okay. I don't know.
Even even that, like, because I would be interested in doing something like that. Just turn my phone off for 2 weeks, see what happens. But
Yeah,
then the thoughts start to creep in. I'm like, well, wait, well, what if someone calls me? What if they text me? But even then, man, the people who are texting you, they don't need you that badly unless you get the once in a lifetime call that's like, yeah, your friend just died or whatever. That's the one
yeah,
time, or like, I just broke my leg out on the trail, come get me. Those are the handful of lifetime emergencies that you get. And at
yeah.
that point, yeah, you need to be there immediately. Other than that, like, it's not urgent at all.
No, none of it is. I mean, it's obviously fun. Like, I think that we really enjoy talking about the existential crises that we face, and there are a bevy of them, and we will have to figure them out as a society, as a people, to get through this AI revolution, which I think is going to revolutionize the way that humans interface with the world, like beyond the cell phone. The cell phone will look like something like a child's toy in comparison, I think, in 20 years to when we all have a personal AI assistant that's talking to us, that's telling us the things to do to maximize production. Like that is happening. We can't slow that down. No matter what we say or do, it's going to happen. Whether or not, video games become so addicting and so lifelike that we want to rather live inside of a video game. That could very well happen to us at some point. I mean, these are things that we're going to have to face. And it's happening. And it is important to think on it. But like you said, like if you just take a step back, like at the end of the day, you still got to go to work. We can talk about this all we want, but like at the end of the day, like I got to pay my bills. You got to pay your bills. Everyone's got to pay their bills. Everyone's still going to work. I mean, the government has basically outright said there are aliens. They're interfering with us. We don't know what they are. And like that's one of the biggest questions that humanity has ever posed since its inception. Are we alone in the universe? As soon as we had an infancy understanding of the universe, we've asked the question, are we alone? And basically the government has come out and said, like, it seems like we're not. And everyone's kind of like, yeah. Like, what? Like, you guys aren't pondering that question more? You really want to talk about, like, just this useless stuff in comparison to that question? The thing that's really, like, since you were a kid and you had, like, imaginative wonder of the universe, and, like, since you could actually comprehend, like, maybe like when you're 9 years old, third grade, you had like a baseline understanding of the universe, like the sun, we orbit the sun, there's Venus, there's Mercury, like, and you go farther, there's Mars, and then there's Jupiter, and like, whoa, and then there's trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of stars in our, observable universe. Like, that's something that we've asked, like, oh, are there aliens? Like, that's something we've really asked. And now we have the government coming forward saying, like, yeah, we've encountered stuff that don't make sense, that we know aren't ours, that we know aren't other countries. And it's a phenomenon we can't explain. And it's seeming to break physics, like aerodynamics, that we currently understand. And it's just like kind of like passing information. Like, it's not changing how we interact on a day-to-day basis.
It is. It's just another talking point. Hey, did you hear the aliens are real? Yeah, I did hear that. And then just keep it moving.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, like you still got to go to work. I think that would maybe change if like a fucking UFO just landed on top of the White House and just like parked there. Maybe then we would all
comes down to where no one can ignore it.
Yeah, but as of right now, it's ignorable, like you were saying.
And there would almost be no way to unveil that would be good enough. Like, what are they going to do? Come out with like a little bird cage and be like, here it is. It's a little gray alien. We found it. Everybody see it. You're watching it on TV. And you're just like, okay. Or is it like the giant Cyclops machine comes down and starts shooting laser beams at the White House? Like, how the fuck do we want this to go down? Because I don't know.
I don't know either. The hope is that they're just watching from afar and like making sure we don't blow up ourselves. It's almost like a godlike creature, Because like the rabbit hole conspiracy theorists, like the really balls deep alien people, say that alien sightings increased, UFO like sightings like exponentially increased after we entered the atomic age. Like after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, like that's whenever we noticed like a giant exponential curve. But that's also when airfare, like airplanes started flying around the earth at an exponential rate. Like, so it's a correlation there. Like, so before that, like World War I, obviously we had airplanes, but they were very limited. And if you saw them, you knew that they were an airplane because they weren't flying at really high elevations. And then you hit World War II, and we have the B-2 bomber at a higher elevation. And then after that, you have fighter planes and all that stuff. So it kind of correlates, but it would make sense that people would be seeing more things that unidentified flying object, because like, what's that? But at the same time, like the people who are like balls deep in it say that, they showed up after we entered the atomic age. So the hope is they're paying attention to us. They're watching monkeys with tribalistic war intentions with the ability to destroy ourselves, and they're just kind of watching from afar, buzzing our fighter planes, saying like, hey, look at your best technology. Like, this is nothing to us. Like, we can outmaneuver you and not even try. We have the ability to enter the oceans in and out at any moment, it appears. And there's also declassified documents that say that they've flown over nuclear missile silos, deactivated nuclear bombs, and then flown away. Like, this has all been declassified. It's all out there. Like, they seem to be drawn to our nuclear weapons, and they've flown over multiple times over ours and other countries. Russia's even said the same thing. They've flown over their nuclear missiles. fucked with them a little bit, interfered with like our computer systems, and then flown off. Like just basically saying like, "Hey, here's your biggest weapon. Here's how you can destroy the world. You can't use it anymore," and then we're gone.
Mhm.
So the hope is, I mean, if they're here, and it seems like something's happening, a phenomena, the baseline, you can't deny that something's happening that we can't explain. There is a phenomena happening. So if they're here, which seems like they are, then they're not interested in a conquest, a militaristic conquest. So the hope is that they're, just kind of like watching from afar as we enter this new age, as we also give birth to AI, which is a new age in of itself. Because if true artificial intelligence is born, that it can think on its own and innovate on its own, then our rate of expansion technologically enters even a more exponential graph. Like we're already innovating at an exponential rate, but if you add AI to the equation, then it starts flying off the rails. So maybe they've already dealt with that. If they were on a similar trajectory, aliens would have had to deal with something similar to that. Maybe they're not even carbon life forms. Maybe we're encountering silicon life form. Maybe we're encountering AI because of space and how hard it is to travel across the universe. When you speak in terms of light speed, the speed of light, traveling at the speed of light still takes you 3,000 years to cross, something to get to a habitable planet. Well, then carbon life kind of gets thrown out the window. NASA astronauts spend a year in space and get back on Earth and they lost 20% of their bone density. Like we're not made to leave Earth's gravity. And maybe there's technology out there that makes it more accessible. Maybe there's not. I mean, the going theory is maybe there's wormholes, maybe there's not. But it's beyond our physics right now. But if you have a silicon life, something that can compute, and it's not dependent on anything other than just like solar power to power itself, well, then it could live forever and it could go explore the universe as an AI. So maybe we're getting visited instead of by aliens, maybe it's like AI craft. Because the way it maneuvers, it would turn us into jelly. Like we know the G forces on this craft is beyond something that the human body could withstand, unless they're distorting gravity, which is also beyond what we understand. It all poses very interesting questions.
And the fact that we're actually here and talking about it, like we're not in the science fiction future someday realm anymore. It's like this shit is happening right now as we're talking and breathing. This stuff is happening,
Yeah.
and it's going to come in our
The
lifetime.
books that our grandparents read are literally happening in front of our eyes.
Yeah, it's always been a question of mine. Like, am I going to live to see it? Yeah, we're going to live to see it. It's not a question now.
Unless some freak accident takes you out, unless nature in its cruel ways, you die in a car accident or you have shitty genetics, you have a heart attack or a stroke when you're 30, if we live the average human life expectancy in America, not including possible medical revolutions to increase our lifestyle going forward, we were going to see a revolution on the par or possible, I think even greater than the Industrial Revolution.
Oh yeah,
Change the way that we interact with and work with our environment. Like it's all going to be changed completely.
that's all happening on this hand. Then on the other hand, I'm looking at my phone and just like YouTube Shorts are the same thing as TikTok, so it's showing me everything I want to see. And I open it, and just the first thing I click on is a lion running through the fucking safari or whatever. There's a mom deer and a baby deer. The mom deer goes this way, the baby deer goes this way. And in a blink of an eye, the lion has the baby deer, neck snap, legs twitching, dead. And I feel like it's good to see that every once in a while because it is extremely sad and violent and heartbreaking, but like that is real life. That is nature.
Yeah, I mean, we've already cocooned ourselves away from the food chain. I mean, you think about it. Like, when's the last time you go to the grocery store and you buy ground beef? You're so removed from the process of what that actually means.
You don't even know what it is.
Yeah, you're just buying beef because it tastes good, because you like a fucking burger, because you're a fat piece of shit. Like, I want to make a burger. I want to put more fat on it with mayonnaise. It's just oil and eggs. It's fat. I want to put more. Oh, and there's more fat I can put on it. I can put cheese on my burger. Oh, sign me up. Oh, wait, bacon. I can get pork and put it on my burger. And you're so connected from what actually is happening. Like if you look into the the farms that those animals are raised in, the conditions they're raised in, so fucking horrific. It is so awful. Like the pig farms, and pigs are especially horrific because I don't know if you've talked to farmers or not. I've had a few interactions with them, and my dad grew up on a farm, so he knows a little bit more about it than I do. And he was saying like pigs are as smart as a domesticated dog. They know their name. You can train them. You can teach them to do stuff. They're intelligent animals. So they have a baseline understanding of consciousness. Because I don't know about you, but I have a dog, and it is somewhat conscious. I mean, it reacts to certain stimuli. It knows when it did something wrong. It gets jealous. It has it appears to be a love for you beyond just a you provide for it. Something beyond that. Like you can treat a dog horribly and it will still obey its master. It's something weird. So it's somewhat conscious. I've watched my dog dream and kick its legs and react to a
Eyes going
stimuli.
like,
Yeah. So we just eat pig because it tastes good, and we've all just disassociated ourselves from the process because we don't have to be involved with it because of capitalism. You don't have to raise it anymore. We barter our labor in exchange for meat. Someone else deals with it. Someone else is horrific in these horrific environments where they literally the person who designed the slaughterhouse, they figured out that animals, when they would go through the slaughterhouse, it would literally affect the animal. They would know that it was coming, and it would sour the meat whenever the animal would know it's coming, because it would release like chemicals into the meat and would make it not as good tasting. This is how horrifically and fucked up we are. We design a system like a turnstile where the animal in front of it can't, the animal behind the animal that's going to get slaughtered can't see it getting murdered and doesn't know. And then it comes around the corner, and then a fucking uh, a nail essentially that's on a like PSI, like a nail gun, comes into the back of its head and hits its brainstem and kills it instantly. So it doesn't know it's coming. So it doesn't affect the meat because we're so disgusting. We want our meat to taste better. That's how we basically solved that. And this is on obviously like mega farms where they're raising like Tyson and stuff like that, where they raise meat for slaughter. Now, if you go to like a farmer here in the Midwest or out anywhere else, it's a little bit different. But the slaughterhouse is essentially the same. Like the animal doesn't know it's coming because they freak the fuck out when they see it, and it like makes the meat not taste as well.
going to a grocery store it's like a psychedelic experience. It's so weird. And
Yeah.
down here where I live, they've passed this citywide ordinance completely banning plastic bags, like the kind you get at Walmart.
Yeah.
So if you go to a store here, like you can't get any bags. You have to bring your own. So I'm just imagining these people like, oh my God, yes, we have banned plastic bags. Meanwhile, I walk in here and I'm like, what the fuck do you think all this food is wrapped in? Your bag of chips, like you've taken out the smallest percentage of the problem and given yourself a round of applause. Meanwhile, everything in this entire store is contained in
Yeah.
plastic, you fucks.
All you've done is made my life significantly less efficient.
Yes.
Like now I have to bring my own bags. Like, but as far as the problem, you haven't solved anything. You've just you put like a minute dent in the plastic consumption of the world. And if you really go down the rabbit hole, like people that like are so like green, like anti-carbon, I get it. Like it's clearly there's like carbon emissions are raising the Earth's temperature. I think anyone that argues with that is just misinformed. Like I truly believe that. But what you don't understand is that the entire world's trade is done on fucking boats that come from China and other countries to bring all of your shit to you. And what do those boats ran on? They ran on diesel motors. So for all of our, diesel is bad. You can't use diesel. You can't run you have to put a DEF system, a diesel exhaust system on cars now. New diesel vehicles have that. So we've tried to avoid diesel. But everything, the world is run on diesel. The world would not function today. Take diesel out of the equation, the supply chains break down within a day, the world ends. There's no way beyond it. Diesel runs the earth. And when you make gasoline that goes in your vehicle, diesel is a byproduct of it. It is so cheap and easy to manufacture. The only reason diesel is more expensive is because our stupid fucking government puts a tax on it because it's bad for emission standards. But it's a dent. It's a fucking minute fraction of a dent as far as the problem goes. We are so reliant on petrochemicals. It's not even funny. So to act like we're making a difference when we say like we're gonna lower emissions 10%, like, oh, cool. Is China doing that? No. Is India doing that? No. Is Russia doing that? No. Like the biggest polluters of the world aren't us. Like on a per capita basis, yeah, we are, but like like okay, we dropped to 10%. It's still happening. So now you just made my life more inconvenient because of some stupid rule that's not going to change anything. Like it's we're so vain. Like people want a solution. Like I think we're orientated towards that. So like we see a problem, we want a solution. So they come up with some solution that's not really a solution. Also, the DEF system on diesels kill the engine. Instead of it lasting for literally ever, now it only lasts 15 years, and you have to replace a bunch of parts on it. It's just dumb because diesel is more efficient. There's more. If you have a gallon of gas and you have a gallon of diesel, diesel has like 50% more energy in it than a gallon of gas. So it's more efficient. So you have to put less fuel in your vehicle and do all less stuff. And the world's still powered by diesel. All of your ocean liners that bring all your shit to you are diesel engines. They don't have DEF systems on them. They don't fuck with that because they know that would literally hamstring the world. So it's just all to make you a little less inconvenient. In reality, if you had a diesel car, you'd get like 45 miles a gallon, no problem. You know, you'd be able to get to and fro at a better level. Diesel is less maintenance on like a basic level, but it's all just because the government decided it's bad for the environment. But in reality, it's like you're saying it's like this. You're making a little bit of a difference.
What if, so you know how if you're a soldier and we hold our armed servicemen in high regard, they're going to serve our country and save our country. What if there's a movement, like a green movement, and it's people just killing themselves? Like we're lowering our carbon footprint and everyone's just offing themselves. And it's like you're applauded for doing it. You're serving.
Well, I mean, to a weird extent, like, I mean, if you don't believe in a God, right? You know, say like you take God out of the equation, what's your purpose on earth other than procreating and passing on to a new generation? I don't know.
And even that doesn't make sense. Like, why is that ingrained in us as the number one goal?
I
Why
don't
the
know.
fuck does it even matter?
But there are people out there that because of climate change have decided they're not going to have kids to save the earth. To save the earth, they're not going to have kids. So it's kind of in a situation committing suicide as far as like a species. Like you deciding they're going to have kids, if everyone decides that, like then our species has committed suicide.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's really interesting, like the way people's brains think, like the way that you get sucked down that rabbit hole so much that you're so worried about the polar ice caps that are so far removed from you that it affects the way you think about your own life, where you're going to remove happiness from yourself. Because from all available metrics and standards, people that have kids that live to be 80 are happier than people that didn't have kids. And that's a fact. So you're literally removing happiness from your life for something that you can't even identify a consequence other than on a scale that we can't comprehend. Because you talk about global warming and climate change, it's almost at a scale that's like you can't use a small scale. You have to zoom out of the whole picture. Like, okay, hurricanes are more frequent, natural disasters are more frequent, but how many times have you been involved in an actual disaster? Not much. I mean, I've seen some crazy hailstorms and some severe thunderstorms, but it didn't really affect my life. Not to discount the people that obviously have died in natural disasters to say that it's nothing, but like on a granular level, it doesn't really affect us. But then people are making decisions based on something, that's so far zoomed out. It's like, Jesus Christ, live your lives, people. Like,
Not to mention the vanity that we have to think like really that Mother Earth cannot and will not correct herself. If shit gets too bad, if we really heat up the planet to a point where we either die, like there we go. That's Mother Nature has fixed the problem on her own by making the planet too hot that we just can't burn any more fossil fuels. We all die. And then life continues on and on and on forever and ever and ever until the sun eventually collapses and all life on our planet is gone forever.
We know that there's been horrific events that have happened on Earth that have changed the global climate by degrees of which we can't even comprehend. We're worrying about like 0.1 degrees centigrade or like Celsius or 2 degrees, 3 degrees Celsius, like that's on a scale that's pretty insignificant compared to things that have happened in the past. And now I'm not saying that we shouldn't steward the earth and do a better job. We shouldn't be dropping batteries into the ocean to raise the pH of the ocean to a point where like fish are fucking like I don't know, toxic with mercury poisoning. Like that's not good. I'd like to be able to eat salmon and tuna for the rest of my life. I like it. It tastes good. Maybe we shouldn't throw our batteries in the fucking ocean. Like, let's start there. Like, let's start on like, hey, all the microplastics that end up in the ocean and there's a garbage patch in the Pacific the size of Texas. Why don't we clean that up a little bit? It's not us though. I mean, up until like 1980, I think New York was taking all of its trash on barges and dumping it in the Atlantic. Like that was just happening recently. And then now that we're wealthy enough to deal with our trash because we have a high GDP, we're like, hey, you fucking suck, China. How dare you? And these people are living on like $3 a day. Like they can't see beyond that. Like they're just trying to survive and feed their family. So the answer to the question, the answer to the problem isn't to point the finger at them and say, stop fucking polluting the ocean. The answer is to get them off of living $3 a day. Because you can't see beyond your existence if you're worried about your day-to-day life. If you're worried on the granular level, you can't see the outscope. Like that's a privilege of a wealthy elite. Like the people that are like, I'm not gonna have kids because of global warming. It's because you can see the outside. You can't see this. If you were worried about your day-to-day life, you wouldn't give a fuck. You wouldn't care about that whatsoever. It's because we have such a privilege. And it's so weird to live on an earth in which, we have it so well. It's 95 degrees outside and I keep my house on 69 and I don't give a fuck. I'll pay that electric bill because I want to sleep in a comfortable bed.
Yeah.
Like I don't care. Like I'll just gladly pay an extra $30 a month just to live like that.
I got my utility bill in the mail yesterday and I'm just sitting there looking through it, which I've never really done like thoroughly in depth. Let me understand each of these charges. It's just like, okay, it's however much money you paid. So I looked in depth at the water bill and it just hit me like they charge whatever $3 for every 1,000 gallons. And like that's an insane metric to charge by the thousands of gallons that you use. It's however many dollars. We are so privileged. And then to think, for example, somebody in a country like that, it's like you're walking to get your water and carrying it on a fucking bucket. Meanwhile, in 1 month, a household has used 1,000 gallons of water.
Yeah. It's so weird because we're sitting here and we're pointing the finger at countries who are trying to get to that perspective.
Yeah.
To get to that level of seeing the earth and not just your day to day. And it's fucked up is what it is. Like we're trying to hamstring these countries from developing. When in reality, we should be developing these countries because the history of developing countries is you start off polluting the fuck out of everything. And then once you get a rich society, you kind of balance out, and you kind of make things better. So we need to be focused more on not just the problem of global warming and, pollution. We should be more focused on raising people out of poverty, getting away from the existential crisis of surviving on the day-to-day level. If you can get 99% of humans away from that, well, then we can start having discussions about how do we limit, global carbon emissions? How do we stop polluting the oceans? How, that's when you can have those conversations. Not to say that we shouldn't already be doing something about it. Like we have the ability to do that. We're a rich country. We're a rich country. We can afford it. So can most of the Western countries in Europe. They can afford to do that. But at the same time, it's like we should be worried more about that. And it's so weird that we sit in our air temperature controlled houses where we're measuring water on 1,000-gallon basis. That's $3.
Yep.
And then we're looking at them and saying, why are you throwing plastic in the ocean? It's like, well, maybe because they can't fucking survive. Like they're literally getting like $1 a day to make your shoes in China or Thailand or something. And then you just wear Nikes on your feet and you tweet about racism, you piece of shit. Like your phone was made by slaves in China. Like the Foxconn factory in China is so horrific. There were so many people committing suicide in the factory. They put up fucking nets in it. Instead of fixing the problem of, hey, we got a lot of people committing suicide in our factory. Maybe we should increase worker rights. They put up fucking nets so you can't kill yourself there. Kill yourself at your luxury of your own home, I guess. Like, so the irony of a society that's so disgusting that we tweet on our iPhones to end racism. Meanwhile, your phone is created by fucking slaves that get $1 a day. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying that we shouldn't end racism, obviously, but it's just like the irony is so prevalent in people that Like you really just travel down, like educate yourself, travel down this rabbit hole. It's an unfixable problem. I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything because that's not the answer, but we should be vigilant of that and understanding of like the privilege we have, not just piss it away with, demanding other people to do other things. It's like live your life at the end of the day. Like the scope of the problem is so big and so huge that you or me can't solve it, can't do anything about it. So make yourself happy. Go find meaning in something you do. Enjoy your work. You're gonna have to do it no matter what. Go find something you love doing. And thankfully I've found something that I genuinely enjoy doing. Now there are days I wake up and I'm like, fuck, 6 in the morning, I have to go work in the heat. That sucks, but it's work. And we have such an unhealthy balance with that idea, I think. Make little strides in your life, improve yourself a little bit daily. Try to make your life better. And here we are, we talked about the world's problems, this whole podcast too. But I mean, I think the most important message is just, yeah, all this stuff's out there. Like you can read down this list of crazy shit and crazier shit, but like at the end of the day, like we were saying, it doesn't really affect your life. Turn your phone off for a minute. Go outside. Go spend some time with your family. Like, I don't know, see your friends. Go do something fun. Like that's stuff that's important. Work for your future. Think about what you want to do with your life. It doesn't have to be about money. You'll figure that out. I mean, we're young still. I mean, that stuff will come. And I hear people that want to have kids. They're like, oh, I just don't have the money for it. It's like at the end of the day, I don't know. My parents didn't have the money for us, but they figured it out. You figured it out. Do stuff that'll make you happy because the metrics are there. They know that if you have kids, you'll be happier when you're 80 versus if you didn't. Like that's a true fact. Like family's important. And I feel horrible for people that had a bad family experience. That's fucked. That's something that we should try to solve. Just create a more unified family experience in this country and the world. Like stop abusive parents, stop people from being pieces of shit, get people off drugs. Like the opioid addiction in this country is horrific. There's clearly a crisis of identity in this country. We don't know what we want to do or want to be. That's why we're all so lost. But just worry about yourself. Take every day as a day and move forward. I think that's a good message to get out there to people. And I do feel like I think you live that way. Like I genuinely admire the way you live your life, the way you talk about it, the things you do. Like you just like you wanted to move to New Mexico. You're like, I'm gonna do it. I love that. And that's awesome. I think that's one of the things I admire most about you is the things that you want to do. You just go do it, and more people need to be like that. If you see something out there you want to do, I mean, life is short. Go do it. And if it sucks, well, then you learned a lesson, and don't do that again, and go do something else. But just to be stuck in your own shit, that's just not a good way to live. And that's easier said than done, obviously.
I feel like that perspective comes from a lack of being able to look at ourselves in the mirror. And I even had this thought today. I went out hiking up in these mountains, and the thought just crept into my mind like, nobody thinks that they're going to fucking go up in the mountains and hike and like die. Nobody thinks when they wake up like, yep, this is for sure the day. But like, I just try to keep that perspective in my mind. Like, you don't think today is the day, but it fucking could, man. There could be a semi that comes and just wipes you out of existence. And if that doesn't happen to you today, like, thank God you're lucky, but it's going to happen to you someday and you're not going to be expecting it. So,
yeah. Or I mean, we pity people that are expecting it. Like people that are diagnosed with terminal cancer, we pity them almost more because then you're confronted with your mortality. But we're not confronted with that. It's so we're so disassociated from like our meat consumption, like we were talking about. We're so disassociated with death. I mean, like when people die, they get taken to a morgue. They remove all of their vital organs. They plug them full of chemicals so they don't decompose, which is so odd. And then we go have a funeral. And I think most funerals I've been to are closed casket where you're not looking at that dead person through the finality of it. Now, if you're a loved one, you have to go identify them in the morgue, and there's that. And I've heard that's horrific. I haven't had to do that. Thank God. I've been very blessed. My life has been very devoid of death from people very close to me. But I mean, that's coming. It's an absolute certainty. It's a fact of being a human. So burying your head in the sand and then not knowing how to deal with it when that happens isn't the correct issue. The quick way to deal with that issue. It's to be vigilant of it. To be vigilant of the fact that like I have 4 grandparents still. That's an amazing blessing that I've had. So I try to do my best to see them, you know, see the people that you love, because you never know when they're gonna go, or you never know when you're gonna go. Like you're saying, you can wake up and die tomorrow. So live a life that makes you happy. Fuck all the other bullshit. Just do something that you enjoy. Find somebody you love and share it with them. Like I'm married. I have my wife, and she means the world to me. And it's just awesome to be able to share your life with somebody. And the idea of losing her is what scares me the most in this world. That's gonna happen. Whether she loses me or I lose her. Like she feels the same way. I'm fairly confident in that. That's gonna happen to us eventually. And that's everyone who's married. They have that same fear. But it also makes life worth living, is to take on this psychotic mess that we call life, and each day bring some happiness out of it. I don't know how you can, and I don't have great advice for you other than, like we were saying, maybe put your phone down, go outside, do something fun. Or if you like to be inside, I don't know. I don't care what you do. Just find something to make you happy. If you want to play video games, that's what makes you the happiest, then fuck it, do it. Don't care what people say about that. I do think there's some value in being outside in nature. Like you're in New Mexico, in some beautiful country. The fact that you just went on a hike today, that's amazing. But I'm a hypocrite. Like the Ozarks is gorgeous. I could go hike today. I could go be outside. I could go do that as well. It's available to all of us, no matter where you're at. There's beautiful places in most of this country.
Yeah. Yeah, we're lucky. Some people, and I lived in Kansas City for 3 years and will never live somewhere that big again. But
Yeah,
we're lucky that we live in and grew up in a place that's small enough to where like we have some autonomy. We can go outside and not be surrounded by 1,000 other people. We can go do things. We can get in our car and drive and not have to walk on a concrete jungle.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even like Western Kansas, which I've shit on my whole life. Haley's family is from Kansas, and they've always talked about going out there. It's super fun. It's really cool. I'm like, oh, Kansas, God, the place you drive through to get to Colorado is my experience with it. I went out there last summer, and there's something about it that's like terrifyingly beautiful all at the same time. Like we were out there in the middle of nowhere, you know, the stars just insane. Like, the stars are great here where we're from, but out there, there's no light pollution almost at all. Stars are incredible. There's no trees in sight. The only thing you can see are the literal windmills, like in the distance, just flickering lights. And it's pitch black. The wind's roaring through these plains, and the grass is shifting, making like crazy, weird, like hauntingly beautiful. You're out there and just the vast openness of it, and it's a different lifestyle. But even Kansas, the place that I shit on the most, I was like, man, I was impressed with it. It was really cool to be out there in pitch black darkness, and you just feel like you're away from the problems and everything. You just live a simple lifestyle, and there's something beautiful to that.
There is. And we have to go out of our way to seek those moments. I feel like we'll have to continue to do that more and more as we get older, as we get busier, have more obligations, as technology continues to become a bigger part of our life. Just finding
Yeah,
those small moments that we can step back and just, dang, those stars are fucking insane.
yeah.
Have a
Those
different
it's
perspective on just the tiny, tiny little speck that you are.
yeah, in a wheel that you can't stop or move. And if you worry about it so much, it's going to crush you. I think that's why so many people have like anxiety and depression, is that whole wheel moving. And it's also, they're probably not living a life conducive to being healthy to themselves. So anxiety, I think as Americans, we have such an unhealthy relationship with anxiety. I think people treat anxiety as some horrible, awful disease. And for some people it is. It truly is this horrible disease. But also anxiety is an important tool that we have. It's a
Yep.
way of your brain telling you you're living a really bad life. Like the things you're doing are bad. You eat like shit. You don't exercise. You're not productive. You're not happy. Why aren't you happy? Why aren't you happy? And so you hear the anxiety and you're like, how do I solve that? How do I solve the anxiety? Like I can take something to get rid of that. But in reality, the anxiety is a byproduct of your life. Like you shouldn't think of it as a negative, and more so embrace it and be like, okay, I'm having anxiety. There's a reason. I mean, this is me, because when I have anxiety, it's for a reason. And
Oh,
like
yeah.
I've always found the reason of my anxiety. It's like I'm not happy with my work. I'm not happy with my life. I'm maybe drinking too much and being a shitty person. I'm having anxiety for a reason. There are people out there that genuinely don't have anxiety for reasons, and they need to be medicated, and they need to have the ability to do that. But I think a lot of people just treat anxiety as if it's that's the problem, when anxiety isn't the problem. It's just showing you the problem.
Mhm.
That's all it's doing. Maybe people should just take a heroic dose of mushrooms and confront themselves.
I feel like it's something everybody should do.
Yeah,
LSD or mushrooms, like,
I think everybody at least once in their life should delve into that realm. You've really delved into it, and you've delved more deep than maybe I would go. But there's a part of me that wants to just say fuck it and try something crazy, like do DMT or something. Just enter the realm, see what happens.
it's a perspective shifter. At least it has been for me. Just
Yeah,
it showed me how much I do not know anything. Like it
yeah, man.
totally crushed me and humbled me to the point where I was like, all right, I I am here. I don't know anything, and I have to just accept that I don't know anything.
That's a great position to be in. It is. I mean, I think all of us are a little too arrogant of ourselves. Like we're the main character of our own story, but there are 6 billion, 8 billion stories being told at the same time. We forget that. We get lost in that idea. Like everything is about you. But in reality, it's like there are 8 billion of us. Everyone wants to be their own main character. And some of us are. So that perspective, because I mean, I've taken LSD, I've taken shrooms, and both of them were very eye opening. I learned a lot of things from both experiences. It's not like some stupid party drug that you're like, oh, dude, let's get high or shit. It is not going to do that to you. It's going to be something pretty scary, pretty
Mhm.
awe-inspiring, and if you do it right, maybe it's fun at the same time.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, when I took LSD, I was in Columbia, like dicking off, not being great, not paying attention to school, not paying attention to what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. In the middle of all of that, a buddy was like, "Hey, dude, do you want to do acid tonight?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I took a tab, and then he was like, got in a huge fight with his girlfriend and had to leave. So it's just me by myself. And I was like, "Oh fuck, dude, I am in this. It's going to happen. Like, what am I gonna
Yeah.
do?" And then the thing that unfolded was just like, it's just you are in it and you were dealing with it. And I walked around East Campus by myself for a while. Alex Othler was with me for most of it, and then I kind of wandered off on myself. And there was a moment I decided to leave Columbia. Like I literally took acid, and then it showed me like you're a piece of shit. You're fucking up here, and I knew it. It was in my subconscious. It was just kind of opening the door, and I was like, "You're right. I need to leave." So I left, and my life is exponentially better from that decision. That's how I met Haley. I decided to go to Springfield after that. So I met my wife. That's how I decided to get into what I'm doing now. It's like a really defining moment for me as a person, which is interesting. It just comes from some like drug that's considered illegal that made me way more productive and way better of a person.
It is weird. I don't understand it. I don't understand why it's illegal because it can be super beneficial. And disclaimer, just like any other thing in life, there are certain things that certain people should not do.
Oh,
Definitely.
100%. Like if you have any mental illness in your family, like schizophrenia, or like people that have a loose grasp on reality, bipolar disorder, like you should probably avoid anything that's going to break your reality, because reality could already be fragile for you. But if those things don't run in your family and you're not really going to worried about a mental break, I think it's healthy. I'm not saying to dive in off the deep end and just go try DMT. Maybe to test the waters. I mean, I think it's some really important, like, because one thing psychedelics do is it makes you really confront your own biases and who you are as a person, like your own ideology, and just to understand that, like, the reason you probably are the way you are is how you were raised and what your parents instilled in you and your experiences that you've had since you were, a child that helped shape you. So when you see that all laid out in front of you, it's pretty eye opening. And I think it'd be like we were kind of saying earlier, it's important to not be married to your own ideologies. So I think, and the fact that that's illegal just blows my mind. Like I get like why cocaine's illegal, I get why heroin's illegal, but like this is something that like genuinely benefits people. I was reading a study today about ibogaine, how it's like people that take ibogaine and or heroin addicts, like they're actually experiencing like almost no withdrawals from the drug after they take it. So it's like it's somehow getting into the brain and adjusting the opioid receptors that we have in our brain so that people aren't like literally dying off of withdrawals. That's a miracle. Like that should be
Yeah.
something that's celebrated and completely de-illegalized. You know, it's all set and setting. It should be done under medical guidance, but you know, that's a massive breakthrough. That this is a huge problem this country is facing. Is just opioids. You know, so the fact that
Pharmaceuticals in general, man. And the
yeah,
sad reality that I've come to the conclusion is that these things will probably be legal someday, but it'll be brought to you by Pfizer. It'll be brought
yeah,
to you in a way that, one, it probably won't get you high, and
yeah,
two, it'll be marketed and packaged in such a way that it'll still be $1 billion industry for
yeah.
those people, the pharmaceutical companies.
Well, did you hear that they had, I think there's a study that came out that they found the part of psilocybin that can treat depression, and they've like basically synthesized that as a drug and got rid of the psychedelic effects of it. They're just going to start treating people with that.
And that takes out half of the experience of it,
I
in my
agree.
opinion. Because it is
I
a
think
head trip. You need those
yeah,
thoughts to be bouncing around in your head, but you also need to have your mind and your perception blown. Like, wait, what the
yeah,
fuck? Why is my hand like wiggling like it's a wave in the ocean? Why am I closing my eyes and I just see like hexagonal, beautiful patterns? And wait a second, my brain can actually do that? What else can
yeah,
I do?
exactly. I think that's like half of. I think it's almost more than half of what makes it so effective. You know, like when I took shrooms, I went outside and I was having like peripherals like exploding like diamonds on the edge of my vision. But I was throwing a football and I was literally just saying like, dude, I can throw it sounds like the stupid highest shit ever. But like I was just like, dude, I can just grab a football and I know where you're at. Like my brain can do a depth perception of where you're at. Like I can guesstimate you're 20 yards away. Then I don't even have to think about it. My arm just puts the right amount of power into the throw and it hits you right here or here or here or here. But it's generally fairly accurate. Like that's fucking crazy. Like that's something that we don't think about. And like it's kind of cool to have an experience where you actually like think about your body more than just like your brain. You know, like you have complete autonomy over it. But like, it's interesting to break down and think about how it works, how you're here, why all that works. And
Yeah.
I think that's an important factor of it.
The first time I did LSD, I did the thing that they say not to do, which is look in a mirror because you'll just get stuck. But I
Yeah.
couldn't stop. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what actually am I? I appear to be this like weird fleshy monkey body thing. And it just made no sense. Like I'm looking at my eyes and seeing like, well, there's literally thousands of fucking interactions going on in just my eyes that are so complex.
Yeah. I mean, and then I started breaking it down further. I was like, you know, this is just a collection of cells, and then
Hmm.
the cells are collections of atoms or elements, you know, and or molecules, elements, and then those are collections of atoms, and atoms are just collections of protons and neutrons and electrons. And then you're just like, what? And I can think and speak and have independent autonomy over myself. I can make my own choices. I can do my own things. And people that argue against free will, like that's getting into the weeds. But the reality is, like, I think it's a more beneficial message to tell people that you have control over your life. Like, yeah, there are things that you can't control within your own life, but you do have control over your life. Like, I can decide to do things on a whim, you
And
know?
it appears that your thoughts that you do have control over, you can consciously decide how you react to situation A or situation B. But it appears that the way your thoughts go is the way that your life goes. And I don't know
Yeah.
if there's a spiritual element of that, if that's what all of these world religions have been trying to teach us for centuries. But like, the way that we think appears to be directly connected with how your life goes, and that we do
Oh,
have a choice.
100%. 100%. Like, I think that you take any religion, there's some really important truths in pretty much any religion. Like, I'm more familiar, like, we're more familiar with like the Bible, with Christianity. And if you really boil it down, like, yeah, it's all about like the New Testament's about like Jesus being savior, all that. Everyone knows the story. But more than that, you listen to his words and how he like told people to interact with the world, it's all love and grace and understanding, and you live your life with that mental, like, I don't know, that emotion of just having love for people, it'll make you a happier person versus you just being angry all the time and hating people. It's just going to feed into that. It's like a vicious cycle of just anger all the time. And how are you going to react if you're angry on a subconscious level? You're going to, you know, burst out more, be more prone to freaking out on people and driving people away versus if you're more graceful, you give grace to people, it's more loving. It's a better way to live your life. Like that's an undeniable truth. Like you don't have to be religious to agree with that. Like, there's some
Yeah.
benefits in that stuff. And like whole Eastern orthodoxies, like, you know, Buddhism, like letting go of the self, and you know, there's some really important like stuff in all of that. And like, you know, Hinduism, it's all about living according to your dharma and like karma and all that stuff. Like there's some also really important lessons in that. Like I'm not saying for people to go out there and become religious, but like be aware of what, like, that shaped society. That shaped all of our societies. You should all read it. You should all understand it. Everyone should. Like get a
Yeah.
baseline understanding of those religions. There's some really important truths in that. All those stuff.
Another thing, if we're getting onto the Eastern Orthodoxy that I've learned from that is the present moment is the only thing we have. The past, it's gone. And for the
Hmm.
most part, our memories are bad. And we've
Yeah.
spun our web of memories through our filter of our own ego and our own perceptions to either make ourselves the victim or make ourselves more cool. So the present's all we have. And I'm guilty of this all the time. Like I'm waiting for my happiness to come in the future when I have more money or I have this or that. But the future never comes. It
No.
fucking doesn't. All you have is this moment right here, right now. If you can't
Yeah.
find a way to be happy in the moment, you're just wasting your life trying to kick the ball further down the line for some life that you think you're going to maybe have someday. When in reality, all you've ever had is the present moment from the second you were born till the second you die.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's something I 100% struggled with. Like when I was living in Springfield and working there, like I was like, man, I just need to get out of this. And it was affecting my day to day, and I was super unhappy. And I was like, if I just move to get back home and do something I actually want to do, and then I'll feel happier. And it's like, I mean, it did. It affected. I feel happier, but you know, like you're saying, it's like you can enjoy your day to day. Then God, what's the freaking point of all of this? Like, and I feel bad for some of the people that are so orientated towards the future and so worried about every dollar they pinch and save that it's going into like a Roth IRA and it's going into retirements, and it's all about like in 20 years I'll be able to afford the house that I want, and it's all about the retirement and my kids will be set up. And it's like, look, I'm not saying don't plan for the future. That's obviously very important. But like if you're so orientated towards that where you're losing out on like enjoying your day, like you have a balance problem. Like you should balance the future with the present. Like you should make decisions in the present to make your future better, obviously, but you should enjoy each day. Like there are some days obviously that you just got to suck it up and you just got to go to work and you got to do it and you're not happy. There's value in that, obviously, but you should enjoy what you're going through. You should enjoy the suckiness, enjoy the mess of it all, and try to find happiness in that moment. You might die tomorrow, and all that planning was for nothing.
Yeah. I've
All the
found
stuff you
that,
did.
yeah, but even the hard times, and for example, you and me climbing a mountain or doing any feat or experience that is generally really hard, it shapes you. And when you look back on it, it's often like, oh, that was actually, it was shitty, but it made a great memory. And I
Yeah,
kind of appreciate it more now because it made me who I am.
yeah,
And it can be
absolutely.
climbing a mountain, a physical task, or a mental thing that you had to go through, going to school, getting a degree, literally anything that you do.
Yeah,
There's
perseverance.
value in hardship.
Absolutely. I mean, I say this all the time. It's almost like my mantra. It's just time. Like it's become like a mantra that I tell myself. Like something that I absolutely don't want to fucking do. Like I don't, you name it. Like do my laundry. Like go to work outside in the dying heat. Like I just say, like one thing I said to myself all the time. I say to Haley, it's just time. It'll be over. You look back at it tomorrow, and you'll be like, ah, that sucked. but it's over. Like it's gonna get. It doesn't. That's where anxiety stems from. Trying to solve back, it's like leaving things half finished. If you don't finish the task in front of you, that's going to give you the anxiety. Coming home to a mess. I know it's like redundant and stupid, but like not cleaning your house, like not doing your laundry, not cooking your own dinner. It's like that little baseline stuff adds up. It's going to give you anxiety. Leaving things half finished. And there are times where you need to maybe just take a fucking break. I'm not saying be on the wire all the time, but I mean, it's important, like you're saying, like that getting something done that you don't genuinely want to do gives you such more satisfaction than leaving it unfinished. It's not even close. Like anything you can think of, something that you didn't want to do that you did and you got it done, it feels so much better than not doing it and pissing off. Like
Because
just
you
doing,
know
just saying like,
you have that voice back here. It's like, hey, you're
yeah,
not giving it your all. Because it
yep,
doesn't feel good to give shit 50%. Like you
yeah,
know that I might get this temporary feeling of putting something off, but it doesn't last.
yeah. I think that's a lot of reason why our society is so medicated. It's like back in the day, you're so immediately focused on the present. Like I need to chop this wood so I don't freeze to death in my house tonight. I need to go butcher that animal. I need to get up in the morning to milk that cow. We need this now. We're so now disassociated from that. Like our lives are so orientated towards like if I do this, I can get that. Like so it's like easy to dick off because even if you don't do the thing you were supposed to do, it's not going to drastically affect your life. Like you still wake up in the morning, you still have food on the counter. Like, yeah, you may not get where you want to go, but like I don't know. You see what I'm saying? Like how things are just like there's a devolution of like we don't need to do as much as we had to do back then. Like it's not as imperative, but it is imperative because you're still having that voice in the back of your head. Like that thing that got us to be monkeys to now, like that's how we evolved, is because we have an underlying anxiety of things telling us in our subconscious, get that fucking done. Like so when you're not paying it, you're not feeding that voice with accomplished tasks, you're not giving it the thing it needs. It's just gonna fester and create like a sore. And it's not healthy. I mean, I've noticed it in my life so easily pinpoint. Like the worst times in my life when I was dicking off, not listening to that voice. It's so easy not to. The easiest decision you can make is to just not do something. That's the easiest thing you can do. You can rationalize it so many ways too. I'm tired. I don't want to do it. It's so easy to. It's so weird because we're constantly in conflict with ourselves.
We are.
Very
That's
interesting.
the weirdest thing about being a human. Well, not the weirdest, but like, why do I have this tendency to kind of want to do things that I know are not good for me?
You're
And
right.
and sometimes like I have no control over it, or I told myself I'm not going to do this today, and I still fucking did it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
man.
the shadow. Like there's a fucking part of your subconscious or unconscious that's like gonna just burst through and control your behavior for a couple minutes here and there, and then
Hmm.
go back away.
I mean, it's so important that we have that, though. Like we would be nowhere without that voice as a species and as an individual. If you didn't have that voice telling you, like our endless pursuit of utopia, like that's almost what it is. Like since the dawn of civilization, we've been endlessly pursuing utopia. But yet here we are in the most prosperous time in the history of human civilization, and yet we still have that voice telling us to go out there, be better, to do more. It's interesting. It's like an unsatiated like feeling that we can never fill.
Is
Like
that
it is.
because we are trying, or maybe not trying, because our destiny is to give birth to AI and we'll eventually go extinct? And just like all evolution from the beginning of time, we're just a small little cog in the wheel? Or is it we're just helplessly and endlessly trying to recreate the divine and we're grasping for something that we don't have access to because we are sitting here in this physical realm?
Mm,
Once we die, our spirits leave our body, we go back to that. And we deep down know that we are not in the utopia. We're not in the endless cosmos.
interesting. That's a great way of putting it. I think I tend to lean more towards the endless pursuit of the divine, like what you're saying. That strikes me as more profound than what we're doing. And in the endless pursuit of the divine, the AI is born.
Mm.
Like in our pursuit of that is when we create things. but like there's a chunk missing from us almost. Like there's something that you can't pinpoint, you can't quite grasp, that you can't quite. It's like a fleeting thought that you can like momentarily hold it in your hand, but like water, it runs out. Like it's just something that you can't quite understand about us and why we have this desire to understand what's around us and the universe and all of that. It's just this endless burning question. And the
It's
more
like
we
the
know, the more we want to know. It's like so interesting.
it's like the ultimate placebo. Like if
Yeah.
you're in a scientific experiment, the placebo, they don't know that they're in the experiment. Meanwhile, here we pop into this dimension. We have no idea where we came from, why we're here, what we're supposed to be doing, how we're supposed to be doing it. But you have to just keep finding food, drinking water, and living day to day.
Yeah.
But the big picture questions that we all have, it seems like we'll just never get the answer to. And is
No.
that by design? Like, is that incorporated into the code of this existence that we have that you're not supposed to know and you will never get to know?
I think that, yeah. I mean, if you, let's put yourself in the shoes of God, right? If you wanted to make an ambitious society of species, you would literally just open up the door enough to see the light, but not allow them to enter the room, continuously chasing that,
Yeah.
right? Because if not, then why would we not be like the monkeys? Like the monkeys seem to just live in a society that, you know, is slightly barbaric, or like an African lion. Like it doesn't go out there and improve its life. It hunts deer, it does its thing, and that's all it does. Like we're the only thing out there. And you know, and dolphins have a larger brain than we do. They're very intelligent creatures, but because they can't manipulate their environment, they're stuck where they're at. But yet we're the only ones that ponder. I think to truly be conscious is to ponder that question. Like that's the spark of life. Like life's all around us. We don't appreciate it because we're used to it. But what makes it so unique and interesting is because we're able to comprehend our place in all of it. Like that whole thing. It's just so it's so prevalent. It's like a thorn in our brain that's never out. And we do our best to bury ourselves away from it. Like we keep ourselves busy, we go to work, we check our phone, but it's always there. At least for me, it's always been there. Like as a young kid, I've always been very questioning. And I think you have too. Always questioned. I'd drive my dad crazy with questions, and he'd finally just tell me, "I don't know, shut up." But I just wanted to know everything. Would you trade your life now if God came down to you? Let's say the creator of the universe came down to you and said, "I can give you all the questions you seek, all the answers to the questions you seek, but you have to die today, or you can continue living without any answers."
It just comes down to how much do you love this life and how much do you think that this is either all there is or there's more.
Yeah,
I'm kind of on the fence of like, I do think this human incarnation is super special and super worthy of appreciation, and we have to treasure it because, like you said, there's African lions out there. There's a lot of other beings. For example, an alligator. That's millions of years of evolution of just kill, eat, die. That's
yeah,
it. And we're
yeah,
so different than that. But I don't know. I want those answers. I hope. Like my fantasy is like you die, you leave your body, and then it's like, here it's like the end scene of a video game. It's like
yeah,
this is why all this shit happened to you. Maybe you get the life review at the end of it that some people who've had near death experiences seem to have. Maybe you don't. But if you were God, if we're going to play that example, what's the only way to further your godliness, to further your power? It's to be disconnected from yourself, to know what it's not like to be God, to not be all powerful. And I almost
right.
wonder if that's us. Like it's taking the whole and separating it by half, and then we're just the eyes viewing the lens of the world from like a
Yeah,
really powerless position.
yeah. It's almost. I mean, if you believe in the idea of a soul being eternal, well, then the only thing that could also be eternal is God. So that means He gave you a piece of itself, of Himself. So He's experiencing the universe that He created in a finite sense. So basically, like does that make sense? In a weird way of explaining it, like we would all have a piece of God within us if we had a soul. So it's him experiencing his own universe and the chaotic nature of it, which is almost sadistic and fucked up. Think about it. All
Well,
the
also,
evil that happens around you.
like if this is all by design, which it is all by design, in my opinion, if you either
I
subscribe
agree.
to the God, like big fairy guy in the sky just waved his wand and created and designed all this like a video game designer, or it's literally 7 billion years of the universe just slowly building on top of each other. Either way, it's by design somehow, some way. But if it is intelligent design, that gives me even more questions. Like, why did you build into the system that we have to die? Like, we have to. Does that make sense? Why
Yeah.
would that be built into the system?
Yeah. I mean, the only answer I could give is that if God is infinite and infinity gets boring, well then you would want a taste of finiteness, correct?
I guess, but like, is that even that fun?
I don't know. It's different. Like
Well,
if you can experience something different, then different's better than nothing. The
yeah.
same. Like if you do wake up and you ate the same meal every day, you would get really tired of it. And if you did that for eternity, you would fucking hate that cheeseburger you're eating every day.
But that's also coming from our very, very limited human mind perspective of like, if I play 2K for too long, I get bored. It gets boring. And I have
Yeah.
LeBron James and I've won the championship 90 times in a row. So I'm bored
Yeah.
with it. I want to move on to the next thing. That's a very
I
human emotion that we have.
Infinity scares me more than finite because I can rationalize finiteness. I cannot rationalize infinity. I can't rationalize the scale of the universe. I can't rationalize living forever, existing forever. I almost have gotten to the point in my life where finite, like literally death, is almost more comforting than the idea of infinity.
Mhm.
Like infinite being, it scares the shit out of me in a
Yeah.
sense of like, if you go through the Christian ideology of like, you're in God's presence forever, and there's nothing more gratifying and fulfilling than being with God. Well, then yeah, maybe if it is that, then awesome, that's cool. But the idea of that, doing that for infinity with my mindset right now, even as a kid when I heard that, like that scared me. I don't know if that
Yeah.
scared you
Same.
too. But hearing
Because
that
the
at eight
thing,
years old, if you just say John 3:16, for God so loved the earth, he gave his only begotten son, we all know that. And hearing that and be like, oh, you're gonna go to heaven and you'll be there forever with God. I'm like, that kind of scares me. I've only been alive for 8 years, but I don't like the idea of being there forever. What if I want to go around and do something different?
well, there's that. And then there's the Christian ideology that we were taught. It's like, once you die, you're going to get to go to heaven and you'll just worship God forever. You'll be bowing
Yeah,
down at his feet
yeah,
forever. Like, that sounds fucking terrible.
yeah. Am I a
It just,
slave? Am I just some slave for some vain being that wants to control my every move? Like that's just so vain that it wants me to worship it. Like what we give to God as far as that ideology, if we had that in a human, we would despise them with every fiber of our being. We hate vanity in a person. The people that want praise and adulation, we don't like. If you get a sense that someone wants your praise and adulation, you don't like them. But we give it to a God and it's okay. It's interesting. Isn't that weird?
it is weird. I've never understood that. The Christian
Yeah.
God is a strange being.
Like the idea is that you're a fractured whole, like you're half of what you should be, because with God is pure happiness and pure joy, and it never gets, it's always satisfying, it's never not satisfying. So I can kind of get that, but then adding affinity to that, it's like that's weird. And then and then when you really delve into it, it's like, well, then Satan was created by God and he turned against them because he got bored of the whole time. He got bored of it too. It's kind of what it seems like, you know he kind of got bored of that as well. So it's like, would you not get bored of it? Do we have free will in heaven? Or are we just bowing down? Sounds like we're just slaves at that point. I don't know.
I think this idea that a lot of people have of like the white floating cloud version of heaven where we have halos and wings, like I don't think that's what it's going to be at all. I think it's
I agree.
more like formless and more energy and vibrational based, like
Yeah. More like a psychedelic experience.
because like everyone has that hope. When I die, I hope I can see my grandma again or see my cousin again or something. I don't think it's going to be like that at
I
all.
agree. I agree completely. Like, I also think that, like, even if you go through it through a Christian theology standpoint, like the whole idea of going to heaven is that you're with God, and that's what's supposed to be the best thing ever. So you wouldn't care if you saw your family again, because
Yeah,
it's not
right.
like you'd lose that emotion of attachment. You would just be fully in the that and now of worship, and that's weird and scary to me. But if you're talking about, like, you are, like, you're back into the energy of the universe, you're back into like some state of existence that is beyond the whims of nature. Like, you're in an elemental state of existence, of energy, of flowing through that. Like, I don't know, that all of it's fucking crazy. I mean, we could die and wake up in a computer game in 2035 and be like, your score was a D minus. Like, you wake up and you pull the goggles off and you're like, oh my God, that was a weird game, like a Rick and Morty thing, where you
Yeah.
play a lifestyle. Like, I mean, it very well could be that too. I mean, we have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, and the simulation theory seems to be grasping at people. I don't seem to buy it, but people seem to believe in it. And then there are enough. I don't know. There's either a God. The history of us in the world is too malignant and too crazy to buy, or it's a simulation. Like, there's either a God controlling the outcome, or it's a simulation, or it's all set up for certain points that you can exist through it. You ever thought about how do you prove that people are real besides you?
When we were
Clearly,
talking earlier about having a big ego, I was thinking like my ego gets so big sometimes that I think like it's only me and everything else is
yeah,
just a projection of like
yeah.
my mind.
Like, are other people just NPCs in your Skyrim? Like, are you just the main character and they're just here to interact with you?
Well, sometimes I'll go through life and just have a day where I'm like, if this was a simulation, like let's just act like it was and see what happens. And oftentimes, like you get weirder results that way.
I've never tried to live my life like that. I've actually never adopted that kind of a doctrine. It'd be very interesting to see what would happen.
But I think that is like it's almost I think that and where a lot of these conspiracy theories come from is reality is so hard and so painful to accept that we
Yeah,
just can't look it straight in the eye. We have to come up with some alternate bullshit
yeah,
explanation for why all these people died in 9/11. Oh, it's because it was set up. It was an inside job. It can't
yeah,
be that just like the world is violent and people kill each other.
yeah. I agree with that. Like, we have to believe in something grander than the reality of what it is. Like, whether it's a god or whether it's whatever you believe in, like, it has to be grander than just on a granular level. It happened because it happened. Like, someone did made a fucking shitty decision, and but that's what made it happen. Like, the people that believe in conspiracies, like what you're saying, I think I completely buy that. Like, that people are just like, reality can't be like this. This can't be the true nature of reality. Like, there has to be something more at play here. So they just make it something more. But the weird thing is, man, there's never been a better time to be a conspiracy theorist. There's been enough fodder out there to start a fucking forest fire. Like, the whole COVID origins thing, like, that was proved true, which was a conspiracy theory at first. Like, all of the COVID stuff, which were conspiracy theories on the fringe of discussion that people were getting banned for, like, are now proven true. Like, this whole alien stuff that's coming out, it's like proving a lot of people true. It's like, I don't know, it's hard for me because, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, I'm just not a conspiracy guy. I just don't buy it. Like, I know me, like, I'm a little loose lipped sometimes. I hear a story and I want to tell somebody. So to act like when people say, "Oh, the government," like, you forget the government is people like that are like me and you. Like, yeah, they may have different experiences, but they're still American citizens that make up the government. They're not evil. Some people are evil, but they're not evil, shitty people. I mean, for the most part, they were just raised in a town, and they had mom and dad, and they had loved ones, and people loved them, and then they decided to work for the government because it paid well, and they're in a situation where they're trying to cover up 9/11. Like, I don't buy that. I'm not buying that. Like,
We're also
people
talking about
forget that.
there's two different breeds of people though. You and I are not sitting here being like, there appears to be a nationwide pandemic. Let's patent this and we can potentially make $20 billion off of it.
Yeah,
Like we're just not doing that. We're not wired that way. Some people are.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, you went into work to be a writer. Let's say there's a writer strike, like there's going on right now, and you hear about it, and it's clogging up your line of work, and no one wants to go work. Well, then you could be like, fuck, I could go make a ton of money if I just write for these people. I don't need to strike. I'm not part of the union. And I could do it at my level. Like there's a strike. Let's say there's a, building materials get so astronomically high. Like there's ways that like, oh, I could look at it through a lens of I can make money. Now it's not affecting people on a level of pharmaceutical companies because it's not something you're intaking in your body. But I mean, you get lost in the idea of it. I think people forget it's a job for them. Like they still come home. They're still Americans or Germans or whoever they are. They're still people. Yeah, they get lost in the idea of like, oh, I can make a lot of money in this situation. And I think they buy their own bullshit. They smell their own farts a little bit. I think they truly thought they were going to help people. And then come to find out they get halfway through and it's not that case. It's not working the way they thought. And then that's how you start a conspiracy. Is because instead of burying the product when they sunk $1 billion in it, they have all these pressures, all these investors that are on their ass. And that's when they force it out because they're caught in a web of something they can't control anymore. Because it's all started from the idea of wanting to help people. I don't think that it's some nefarious shadow group that's controlling the earth. I think it's just people get lost in their own shit. And there's too many outside pressures and the ball's already rolled down the hill and they can't stop it. So what they do is they bury studies, they go, they do everything they can to get this product out in the market because, it's not just affecting me. It's, Tim and Johnny work at my company. And if I go tits under, they lose their job. What are they going to make money? It's a human problem. It's a very uniquely human problem. Like it's easy to like, it's people are like, you forget how easy it is. Like, to be in that position and rationalize it. I mean, there's so many studies that have been done about like the Nazi guards where it's like, yeah, you would do the same fucking thing. Like if you were in Nazi Germany and you were born in that time period, you would have systematically eliminated the Jews as well. Like you are human. Like we make fucked up decisions. It doesn't change away from the fact that you still can make good decisions. So it makes it so unique. Like we can make great evil. We can do horrible stuff. And the same token, those people that did horrible things can also do good stuff. Very weird. That's uniquely human. Like a lion kills because it kills. An alligator eats because it eats. It's very binary. But humans aren't binary. There's so many outside things inside of that make us who we are. And that's where it gets interesting. And that's what makes us so unique to the universe, as far as what we can perceive right now. And there are other examples, like dolphins apparently aggressively rape other dolphins. That's why women dolphins are so promiscuous because they literally just go whore around. Because if a male dolphin finds out that their kid isn't theirs, they'll kill it. So what's a woman do? It fucks all the male dolphins so that they all think it's their kid. So it's a weird adaptation. So that's uniquely kind of weird as well. There's some examples in nature, but we for sure are the best example of something that's just so uniquely gray. Like I'm sure Adolf Hitler, for the worst human being that we can think of, had some redeeming qualities. He probably loved his kids or something. He probably had a love for people around him. Like he had some redemption to him in
That's
a
the clip that
horrific
I'm going
way.
to take right there.
Yeah. I mean,
Just those
that's
10
going to get me
seconds.
canceled. It's going to get me canceled. But I mean, you think about it. I mean, there is some redemption to him. Like there are people that were in his lifestyle that didn't think of him as the monster that we think of him as now. Like people saw him as, you know what I'm trying to say, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, and there's examples for that all throughout history, like Lenin, Stalin. Like there are people like that. I don't know. It's what makes humans so interesting. Now, obviously, Hitler was a horrifically fucked up, horrible person. But it is weird though how we hate the Nazis more for systemically trying to exterminate one race, while Stalin can systemically try to exterminate any dissidents. But because he wasn't specific in who he killed, it's just any dissidents, we don't give him as much shit. Just because Hitler hated Jews in comparison to everything else, he's more evil.
Dude, go ask a random stranger on the street and say, who was Joseph Stalin? I bet you 50% would be like,
I don't know.
I really think that's the truth.
I would probably agree with you. If you ask people who Hitler is, they know who Hitler is.
Yeah, but like Stalin just doesn't have as much street cred. I don't know why you don't hear about him as much.
Yeah. I mean, also the Communist Party, like whenever they came into power, they killed more people than Russia. Oh shit! Dropped the phone. You have to cut that out.
On that note, should we wrap this up? How long have we been going?
I have no idea. It's 8:20. It's been a decent amount. I feel like we can't end it on me trying to apologize for Hitler. Like that's probably a bad way to end. I want to make that clear, people. If anyone out there is listening to it, I'm not a Hitler apologist. Just saying he's a human. People are weird.
Like if our goal for this whole thing was for a very obscure YouTube channel that like this interview, let's say it will get less than 100 views. For an extremely obscure startup YouTube channel to get pulled from YouTube, like someone from YouTube reviewed it, said, way too fucked up. What would we have to do? Because it's not like we're on Joe Rogan's podcast and we're like gonna just drop a nuke on society. What do you think someone like me and you, who we're just nobodies, what would we have to do to like flag the attention of YouTube and then be like, nope, fuck those two guys in Missouri and New Mexico. They cannot. We cannot even have 25 views on this video.
Well, you'd probably have to clip. You'd probably have to clip what I said and like caption it, like Hitler wasn't that bad, or I don't know.
Can you?
I mean, that would probably flag that, huh?
I wonder if you can say that. If we were to go on YouTube, is there one video that's like top 5 reasons why Hitler wasn't as bad as you think?
Google it. See what it comes up. Do you have access to a computer right now? I don't.
I'm on one. Let's see here. I'm gonna show you this.
Yeah, I want to see. Like Google going? I guess you have to go on YouTube to prove the point.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
What about this?
Yeah, I got you. Type in Hitler wasn't that bad. See what comes up.
Okay, we have something here on Amazon. Seems like this is not a hot take.
Yeah,
This is a customer review on Amazon. Hitler was not the bad person they made him out to be.
Interesting. What is he reviewing?
Dude, 92 people found this helpful.
So is he just reviewing Hitler on Amazon? Is that what's happening? Is there like a book he's reviewing or something?
Oh shit. So he's reviewing The Bad War, The Truth Never Talked About, maybe? Looks like this is maybe a book, but if you try to click on it.
Who's it by?
M. King. Who is M. King?
Martin Luther.
Imagine if that was like Martin Luther King's secret doctrine.
Lost book.
Oh, dude.
We're on our path to getting canceled now. I think that did it. That was it right there. So someone just put a review out on Amazon talking about Hitler's not that bad.
Well, they were reviewing a book or something that said the history they don't tell you about.
God, what a weird idea. What a weird ideology to subscribe to. Like white power people. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, white power, we're the best. Such a weird, I don't know. How do you get lost down that? Like, that's so fucking
because
weird.
We love us versus them, dude.
Yeah, I guess they're just the other. They're just the other. That's all they are in their mind.
I saw something, who knows where, could be complete bullshit. But like people who are in war-torn countries during actual times of war are actually happier and have higher levels of dopamine than when they're not, because it's like we're working on something together.
I could see it. I mean, how many stories have you heard from like people who like actually were conscious during 9/11? Talked about how the country was unified and people were so like America, America, and that's a pretty small example compared to like World War II. Yeah,
if we're just on our way to getting canceled.
Yeah, we need another 9/11. Let's end the podcast, but we need another 9/11. I think that's a great one. Clip that and put that out there. I think people would really resonate with that. I think that would
be a hilarious.
We can't hit New York City again. It's redundant. So what city are we going to hit this time?
LA seems like a good choice. Maybe Chicago.
LA is redundant. It's on too much media. And what's a good like national landmark that could be used that could like go down?
That people would be the most upset about.
Most upset about.
Well, I would say the Statue of Liberty, but if we're not going to go New York, I guess the White House.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know. There'd probably be people out there that applaud that.
Yeah, they'd be happy about it.
It's got to be like not. It's got to be like a neutral. Something people like. Maybe the Arch. The Arch people seem to like that.
Yeah, I don't know. More people cared when Kobe died than like
Yeah,
when
sure.
when 500,000 people died from COVID.
Dude, Kobe, that one hit me hard. I'm not gonna lie. That was a tough one. R.I.P. Black Mamba. He's a goat.
Something like this is another fucked up thought, but if you die young in some tragic way, you will be remembered forever. Like Mac Miller, Kobe Bryant, everyone's like, oh no, it wasn't
XXX
so sad.
Tentacion.
Yeah, it gives you infamy.
Yeah.
It's almost like, damn, would it be better for just some crazy shit to happen like that?
Yeah, but it's like short lived. I mean, who's gonna remember Mac Miller 60 years from now?
Nobody's gonna remember anything 60 years from now.
I mean, people still talk about Jimi Hendrix. He died when he was like, what, 26, 27?
But why do they talk about him? Not because he was like 90 years old and died in a retirement home.
Oh, because he was considered
so good and he was so tortured and he died of drugs and
yeah. Like, was he actually the greatest like guitar player of all time, or is it just because he died young? Like, is that why he gets the mantle? Like, I'm sure there are better guitar players out there right now, but no one talks about them because they didn't die young and they didn't have fame while they were doing it.
I don't know.
Back to the present issue. We got to find a city for the next 9/11.
And we're the ones who are actually operating.
If we're orchestrating the plan, how do we get a country to back our then war? Who are we going to go to war? Who would we blame it on? We had to pick a country that doesn't have nuclear capabilities.
Does Mexico have nukes?
I don't know. It's a good question. I would assume they do, but I don't know.
At this point, what countries don't have nukes?
That's a good question as well. I don't think. I don't know. I bet Mexico doesn't have a nuclear weapon, but because of the Monroe Doctrine.
What's
Google that really fast.
We have to get back to present now. This is so fucking nifty.
This is kind of cool. Does Mexico have a nuclear weapon?
Monroe Doctrine. U.S. foreign policy position that opposes European colonialism. What?
In the New World. This was the President Monroe who said, like, we don't want any other countries meddling in the Americas. So North America or Latin America, South America, like, we just said, like, stay the fuck out. So we're kind of like, we patrol it. It's like our territory. Like, we'll go to war with somebody if they try to like peddle influence in our part of the world. Kind of my understanding of it.
Okay, so we have Mexico and weapons of mass destruction and lists of states with nuclear weapons. Doesn't look like they do.
That's what I thought. Yeah, none of the Latin American countries do, because we're the only people. We're the big dogs.
What is this green? States formerly possessing nuclear weapons? Are those like, oh shit, I bet Ukraine wishes they still had some nukes right now.
Yeah.
How do you formerly possess nuclear weapons? You had it once and then you just gave it up to somebody?
Yeah, that's weird. Nuclear proliferation. I think that was JFK was the big guy against kind of denuclearizing the world. And we kind of went into a weird area where everyone was trying to descale. Like, we have less nukes than we did back like 40 years ago.
Do you see these numbers right here?
No, I have to pick the phone up.
So the U.S.
Nice
has
view for everybody.
The U.S. has 5,244 total nukes. We have deployed. Is that right? 1,670.
That means that we've like tested that many?
Well, it says right here 1,030 tests. But according to these numbers, Russia has more nukes than the U.S. and has also deployed more.
Yeah, I knew that. we've kind of toned down our nuclear arsenal, but we still have enough to destroy the world. So it's like, why does it matter? Do you destroy the world 3 times or just once? Like,
Dude, look at
yeah,
this. The US has 5,000 total nuclear warheads. Russia has 5,000. The next closest is China, 410. And you hear all this talk about uh, North Korea. They have 30 nuclear warheads. That's literally nothing.
yeah, but that's a county gone. I mean, that's 30 counties just erased from the map. That's not nothing. I mean, that still poses a threat. Like if they launched, that's fucking game over.
Dang, good for Mexico. They have renounced nuclear weapons and pledged to only use its nuclear technology for peaceful purposes.
Yeah, well, they said that because Daddy United States said, "Bitch, you ain't having a nuclear weapon on our border." Like I think that was like the point of the Monroe Doctrine. It's like no one's gonna have a nuclear bomb in this, and we got them first, so we kind of like held the stick, and they're like, "No, no." But then Russia was like, "Fuck you, we don't care."
Dude, Russia is so big. Like it is
Yeah,
an absolutely massive nation.
it's twice the size of the continental United States. Like that's fucking insane. And the United States is massive. Like you drive through the United States, it's huge. Like drive coast to coast. Now do that another time. That's Russia. And it's just all barren landscape. It's all like tundra and like Siberia where no one lives. Like most of it's uninhabitable.
If you were Putin, would you take mushrooms, LSD?
Oh God, I think you get in that position not taking mushrooms or LSD. Like,
Yeah.
I think people underestimate. Like, I don't know. I think this whole like calculus of like we need Putin gone. It's like, well, what replaces him? Like, we have a good historical example of who replaces the dictator that you dispose. Because most times it's not fucking better. So let's not fight fire with fire here. This is not a good idea. Like, that's my opinion. I'm very uneducated, but I still am more educated than most people. It's like if you dispose Putin, who's the next guy? Is because the Russian people, like the biggest misunderstanding people have is they think they're subjugated and they don't like Russia. No, they're very proud. They like their country and they're pretty pro-Ukrainian war. Like the internal polling in Russia is like they're pretty unified for the most part. Like this little blip that happened is really interesting, and I don't understanding enough to talk about it. But yeah, they're a very proud people. That's not like they just like want to dispose of their government. Like I don't know, they're buying it hook, line, and sinker. So if we dispose them, who's coming next? What's the next thing? Is it going to be more hawkish? And they have the most nuclear warheads in the world, so we shouldn't be like hoping that their government falls because then you have mercenaries in the hands of nuclear weapons. Like that's not a great solution, I think, for the world peace. Like we should probably be opening our arms and hoping that Russia somewhat tries to, be more democratic. At the same time, it's beyond me. Like that whole foreign policy stuff with them is interesting, to say the least.
If you had to make a life savings bet, do you think in our lifetime we see nuclear weapons used again? Yes or no?
Like on a military operation,
Yeah.
not just like testing. Outside of some natural disaster that makes resources scarce, so if you take that away, I would say no. I don't think we see another nuclear interaction. If resources become scarce, if something traumatic happens and people are fighting over resources, then yes. But if that's removed from the equation, which I think it probably is, then I would say no, no nuclear weapons. I mean, it's
Good bet.
possible.
I'm glad you didn't speak that out into existence. Watch you
Yeah.
like you're like, yeah, I think they will. And then next week it happens.
Yeah.
That would
Fallout.
that'd be fucking crazy.
I'd rather be wrong on that guess than be right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think so. I mean, what kind of a person does that? You press the button, it's game over.
Yeah, you're
And
not
it's
only ensuring death for a lot of other people, but at this point, potentially yourself.
like that's why we fight proxy wars. Like we're fighting a proxy war with Russia right now, with Ukraine. We're fighting proxy wars in the Middle East. It's like that's what we've done since World War II. Because you can't fight a big old war now because it's game over. So we just kind of vie over like positions of power. Like we still go to war. We fuck up the people that are in between it. People that don't have nuclear weapons are fucked. But we've ensured more world peace by having nuclear weapons. I do believe that. Because we would have gone to war with Russia, and Russia probably would have gone to war with us had they not had the ability to destroy each other instantaneously without actually expending real resources. It kind of keeps people from doing crazy shit.
We're living in the weirdest of times.
Very weird times. We had a good message there, like two-thirds of the way through. Live your life. Don't worry about the bullshit.
Yeah.
Everything
People
will
should
be
just
all right.
stop listening at that point. That's where we kept
Yeah.
it positive. After that, we got
Yeah,
into Hitler.
we kind of dug back into
No.
Hitler apologists trying to find our next 9/11. It's okay.
But that's what you can expect, man. Thank you so much for doing this. I feel like we've been talking about giving people this for like 10 years.
Yeah, hopefully it's received well. Maybe it's a little shaky at first, but I think we got into some interesting stuff.
If anybody is actually listening to this and they have made it to like
This far,
bravo
bravo.
to you.
Yeah, seriously,
Honestly,
there
I
was not.
question what you were doing with your life. Like you really had nothing better to do. But also, good job. You made it.
Hey, at least one of our talks is immortalized. It's out there. We can listen to it
is.
20 years from now and show our kids and be like, look how weird we were.
Yeah. That's fucking awesome, man. I love you to
Yeah.
death.
Love you too, man. We should do this again. Maybe we bring some other folks in on it. Do like a conference.
Yeah, we got to expand up from here. If we don't get canceled, like straight up canceled, I think we have
If
failed.
if this actually blows up, then we'll go from there. I doubt it though.
We'll see. CIA knocks at your door tomorrow.
Yeah, you said some fucked up shit about 9/11. You were planning the next 9/11, Logan.
You end up in a jail cell. I'm there, like naked, tied hands behind my back, just getting talking
What
about
city?
torture.
You mentioned the arch in Los Angeles. What city are you going after?
The fuck are you talking about? It's like that scene from that 007 James Bond movie where he's like hitting the guy's balls while he's up to the chair. Have you seen that?
Yes, and you're sitting there just getting whipped, and he's like, they're like, Ty gave us an answer. Are you going to give us the same answer? And then they just like take the belt off and like tie me down. And like, are you going to give us the same answer? And I see you bloody and beaten. Fuck.
Well, just because of podcasts, we fucking unleashed an evil spirit into the world.
Oh, jeez.
Let's get off of here before we cause any more destruction.
Sounds good, man.
Any fucking tarnish our family names.
I hope parents don't listen to this. It's fine.
Either way, man, let's do this again and
I agree.
drag some more people into our filth.
Sounds good. All right, man. Love you, Doug.
Love you, brother. Peace.
See ya.